Chapter 9:23. The top of the treetop had reached the clouds. The purple clouds were misty here, as if they were in the upper world. At the top of the trunk of the ancient path green lamp tree, which was so thick that it would take more than 10 people to wrap their arms around it, a bronze flower bud was displaying a mystical scene. It was only the size of a fist, but it was blooming with infinite Taoist light. It was as bright as a lamp of the sun, illuminating the world. The ethereal and grand Taoist sound resounded from it, like the morning bell and evening drum, deafening the deaf. Looking carefully, the bud had exactly 49 petals. Each petal showed a different breath, as if the traces of the Great Way were imprinted on it. It was extremely magical. There are 50 Great Ways and 49 heavenly evolutions. One is lost, and the surplus is lost. This flower contains the number of heavenly evolutions. With the image of a lamp, the wonderful Taoist marks are deduced, just like the one that has escaped. With the rise of one, all things are born, and it is the beginning of the Great Way. The fortune hidden in these words must be extraordinary. Some strong men murmured, with shock and fanaticism on their faces. In the nearby area, Ji Xingyao, Yu Lingkong, Luojia, and other peerless figures and other strongmen had all arrived. Witnessing such an unprecedented phenomenon, they couldn't calm down. There was no doubt that this was definitely the first fortune. Lin Sun also marveled in his heart. The only bronze flower bud was really amazing and extraordinary. However, if the fortune hidden in it was really left by the sages of the ancient times, it was normal. Lin Sun, be careful. Yu Lingkong has already made up his mind to kill you. You must be on your guard. Suddenly, a sweet and clear voice came to Lin Sun's ears. Lin Sun looked calm, but he instantly judged that the voice came from Bai Lingshi, who was standing beside Yu Lingkong at the moment. There were 4 or 5 descendants of the pure land of longevity with her. Lin Sun still clearly remembered that when he participated in the Tao discussion, there were more than a dozen descendants of the pure land of longevity. But it was obvious that most of them were eliminated in the assessment. Only Bai Lingshi and Yu Lingkong arrived here together. I know. Lin Sun replied by voice transmission. He was not surprised. Even if Yu Lingkong didn't come to him, he would go to Yu Lingkong. Don't take it lightly. Yu Lingkong himself has already set foot on the path of the strongest Tao. Moreover, he has the immortal temple in his possession. That is one of the most powerful treasures of the pure land of longevity. It possesses terrifying killing power. I advise you to. Bai Lingshi seemed very anxious and worried, reminding and admonishing Lin Sun. Lin Sun listened quietly, and a warm feeling surged in his heart. Although he had many enemies, he also had many friends. Bai Lingshi was undoubtedly one of them. Lingxi, promise me one thing. Lin Sun transmitted his voice. If there is a conflict between me and Yu Lingkong, you must not get involved. Bai Lingshi was stunned while a wisp of a complicated expression flashed in her starry eyes. She sighed faintly in her heart because she realized that it was impossible to change the outcome of this battle. Because no matter Yu Lingkong or Lin Sun, based on their characters, they were destined not to give in. Whoosh! Suddenly, some strongmen couldn't restrain themselves and wanted to go forward to find out what was going on. But before he got close, he was swept away by a purple light and fell heavily more than 30 meters away. His face was gloomy and uncertain. Seeing this, other strongmen were shocked. They suppressed their greed and impulse and didn't dare to act rashly. Someone sneered, "The good fortune hasn't really come yet, but you want to act first. You are really tired of living." As time went by, the bronze flower bud became more and more dazzling, making people unable to look at it closely. Moreover, the waves of Tao sound were grand and boundless, like the sound of the gods, making people's souls tremble. Clatter! Suddenly, the bronze flower bud bloomed and sprayed out thousands of rays of auspicious light. The rays of divine light pierced through the sky. Everyone felt that their eyes were suddenly dazzled, and the world suddenly changed into another scene. An ancient tree with verdant branches and leaves swayed in the wind. Under the ancient tree there was a simple and ancient Taoist field. The heavens and the earth were vast, the sky was covered in auspicious clouds, and the air was suffused with chaotic qi. It was like they'd arrived at the primeval times, and the aura of time assaulted the face. At the center of the Taoist field, over 10 figures sat cross-legged on meditation cushions. There were men and women, young and old. Even though their appearances were different, all of them were suffused with a divine aura, possessed an extraordinary imposing aura, and emanated a great dignified aura that caused all living beings in the world to feel reverence towards them. They seemed to be discussing the Tao. The entire Taoist field was filled with voices that were either clear, warm, passionate, or gentle. When it entered the ear, it carried a different kind of charm. It was like the sonorous tune of the Grand Tao was reverberating, and it carried a force that struck directly at the heart. For a time, everyone was stunned on the spot while they revealed dazed expressions. It seemed like strands of the tune of the Tao were gurgling and flowing within their hearts, and it seemed like the tune of nature that came from afar. It caused everyone's minds to be empty, and they instinctively sat cross-legged on the ground. Lin Sun was no exception. At this moment, he was like an ignorant child that had heard the Grand Tao for the first time. He was muddle-headed and dazed, and he didn't know where he started or where he ended. However, he naturally experienced the energy of the Tao, and it conformed to everything in the world. His entire body was suffused with strands of Tao insight that glowed brilliantly, and he seemed otherworldly while the vital energy in his entire body flowed without end. In his daze, he seemed to see heavenly dragons coiling around the Taoist field, phoenixes spreading their wings, numerous clear flowers of the Grand Tao falling down from the sky, and strands of golden light coiled around the ground and surged. All the divine figures were discussing the Tao, and the heavens and the earth were covered in a grand and solemn scene. But in next to no time, these numerous phenomena vanished, and everyone suddenly awoke from their dazed state from before. After that, they noticed that even though those phenomena had vanished, the Taoist field was still there, but it was empty. All the divine figures that were discussing the Tao and the ancient verdant tree had vanished. Everyone's pupils squinted. Could this be the first fortune? They were unable to see through it. It was too miraculous. The scenes from before still remained in their minds, and it was obviously not a dream. This undoubtedly meant that the fortune had already descended, and it was right before their eyes. But it was filled with profundities, and they had to be explored and searched for. Without a sound, an obscure and strange ripple spread out like a ripple. In an instant, everyone saw a cushion appear beneath their feet. Someone immediately had a flash of inspiration in his heart, and he was the first to sit down cross-legged. In an instant, his entire body glowed while strands of the tune of the Tao resounded in the heavens and the earth, and it enveloped his entire body. Could it be that he's receiving an inheritance? The other experts didn't hesitate to sit cross-legged on the meditation cushions when they saw this. Instantly, the tune of the Tao surged like a tide and poured down, and it bathed every single expert within it. There was no distinction between them, and it seemed to be extremely fair. The tune of the Tao poured into the ears of everyone, causing their bodies to tremble while their souls resonated with it, and various comprehensions instantly arose in Lin Sun's heart. This was the profundities of the Grand Tao explained by the sages. It wasn't a specific inheritance, and it was the experience and knowledge related to cultivation. But there was no doubt that this sort of comprehension and knowledge was even more precious. Lin Sun concentrated on comprehending, while the spirit of the spirit was vigilant towards the surroundings, as he was worried that he would be attacked by other experts at this time. He listened carefully and operated the secret method of Chiu Nyo's heart to comprehend and observe these profundities that describe the profundities of the Grand Tao, and his body and mind were greatly touched. In a trance, it was as if he'd returned to the ancient times, and he'd witnessed one sage after another step onto the path of the Grand Tao to rise in the heavens and the earth, and they fought in all directions as they advanced triumphantly all along the path of cultivation. Every path was different from the others. Some people were born in humble origins, but they proved the Tao with a humble body, defied the heavens, changed their fate, and embarked on the path of freedom. Some people had extraordinary talent, experienced dangers, experienced ups and downs on the path of cultivation, and narrowly escaped death. They proved the Tao with great perseverance and became an ancestor. Some people took an unconventional path, and their path of cultivation was accompanied by numerous tribulations. They stepped on piles of bones, and they killed their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Different paths and different lives of cultivation transformed into completely different experiences and comprehensions, and they were like numerous paintings that unfolded in Lin Sun's heart. He was immersed in it and carefully savored it. He used the path of the ancients to verify and sort out his own path, and he was greatly enlightened. Some puzzling mysteries in his cultivation in the past were solved one by one, and he had a great feeling of being enlightened and gaining great gains. Pooh! Suddenly, an expert in the distance trembled violently and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Practically at the same time, an indifferent voice resounded in the heavens and the earth. Your mind isn't firm and you're confused by the profundities of the Grand Tao, yet you've lost your Tao heart. You're incompatible with my Tao and have no fate with fortune. Retreat. Along with this voice, the expert that coughed up blood didn't even have the time to react before he was carried away by a wave of void fluctuation and vanished on the spot. Instantly, the hearts of everyone who was comprehending the profundities of the Grand Tao shook, and they were shocked. Could it be that this is a test to select disciples and preach? Whoever can better fit with these comprehensions of the Grand Tao will possess the qualifications to strive for fortune. Someone muttered as he discerned a clue. All the experts that were able to persist until now possessed extraordinary intelligence, so they naturally discerned these profundities as well. All of them instantly felt fearful and didn't dare be careless in the slightest. Lin Sun was the same. He didn't delay and continued comprehending. Because he noticed that these comprehensions were branded with different paths towards the Tao, and if he was able to use them as reference and verification, then it would be immeasurably beneficial to his path towards the Tao. But in next to no time, his soul core acutely noticed a strand of killing intent, and he was instantly jolted awake. After that, he saw a figure charging explosively towards him. Zhuoquanglan. At this moment, he was like a peerless sword. The vital energy in his entire body was condensed into one, and he withdrew a spirit sword before slashing down at an inconceivable speed. However, he just moved halfway when that spirit sword was soundlessly eliminated and vanished into thin air, and it didn't even leave a trace of its aura behind. On the other hand, he seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning. He maintained his charging posture while being restrained in space, and he had a terrified and dazed expression on his face. Arousing killing intent while comprehending is no different than falling to the path of the devil. Retreat. The indifferent voice resounded once more in the heavens and the earth. No! Zhuoquanglan was shocked and furious, and he revealed extreme unwillingness. He seemed to have never expected that such a thing would occur, and he would definitely not have acted arbitrarily if he knew this would happen. But it was too late for regret. No matter how he struggled, he was still instantly teleported away from the square and vanished. In an instant, a wave of shock swept through the crowd. Especially Yu Lingkong, Mu Jianting, and the others. Their gazes flickered while a trace of bewilderment and surprise that couldn't be eliminated lingered on their faces. Chapter 924. While they were comprehending in the Taoist field, many experts had other ideas and thought that this was the best time to launch a sneak attack on their opponent. But when they saw what happened to Zhuoquanglan, they broke out in a cold sweat and secretly rejoiced that they hadn't taken action. A single mistake ruined a great opportunity for nothing. Some people felt pity and sighed inwardly. They all knew that Zhuoquanglan was a peerless figure from the Feather Sword sect, and his attainments in swordsmanship were unfathomable. The first opportunity was so close at hand, but he was eliminated because of a single mistake. Naturally, it became a tragedy. Speaking of which, there was actually no hatred between him and Lin Sun. The reason why he attacked Lin Sun was because of Shai Yutong. Shai Yutong was also from the Feather Sword sect, but he had been suppressed and ravaged by Lin Sun on the shore of the floating sea. Zhuoquanglan regarded this as a disgrace, and expressed that he would seek justice for Shai Yutong on the spot. It was a pity that he was eliminated before he had time to fight with Lin Sun. This result was indeed beyond people's expectation. The evils brought upon themselves are the hardest to bear. Lin Sun was unperturbed by this. Even if Zhuoquanglan hadn't been eliminated, his sneak attack was doomed to fail. On the contrary, he would have been killed by Lin Sun, who was already on guard. The Taoist field was old and mottled, flowing with the aura of time. A group of experts sat cross-legged on their futons, and all kinds of obscure and mysterious sounds of the Great Way echoed between heaven and earth. It was as if all the sages were chanting scriptures. This was not only a precious experience for Lin Sun, but also a rare opportunity for other experts to comprehend. Any one of the sage's insights and experiences was a priceless treasure that would make even the old monsters of the king's domain jealous and coveted. As time went by, all the experts who were meditating in the Taoist field revealed a look of joy. They had also gained a lot. For a time, this area that was reflected by the bronze flower bud grew even quieter, and it emanated a tranquil and solemn aura. Everyone was seizing every second to meditate and comprehend the great way inherited from the ancient sages. Lin Sun's body glowed as he experienced different paths to enlightenment. Each path was extremely mysterious and full of unimaginable mysteries. Lin Sun immersed himself in it and verified his own path. Only now did he understand that there wasn't just a single path towards the Tao at the absolute peak. Some moved their vital energy and blood to walk the path of body refinement. They tempered their vital energy and blood to forge their Tao bodies, causing their bodies to undergo an extreme transformation and attain an unprecedented extreme realm, thus stepping foot onto the absolute peak. This Tao could be seen as the path of physical sanctification. Some people studied the technique of qi refinement, and since the ancient times, they'd cultivated 1,000 profound techniques and a myriad of Tao arts. In the end, they'd achieved mastery through a comprehensive study, and they'd taken a path of extreme advancement to step foot onto the absolute peak. This Tao could be considered as the path of qi refinement to become a saint. There were also some who gave up on their mortal bodies and focused on the art of the divine soul, nurturing the divine soul, controlling the divine soul, accumulating the divine soul, transforming the divine soul. Step by step, they reached the pinnacle. This Tao could be taken as the path of refining the soul and transforming into a saint. These three different methods of cultivation were also called the three paths of the apex. Every single one of them included a myriad of phenomena, and they were obscure and profound. Since ancient times, almost all the paths to the apex were included in the three paths to the apex. However, the path pursued by every single cultivator was different, and they couldn't be lumped together. For example, the path Lin Sun had stepped foot on now belonged to the path of qi refinement. Lin Sun had never imagined that he would comprehend some secrets of the path in this miraculous Taoist field. In the past, he'd always been fumbling about by himself, and he'd repeatedly deliberated and verified it before he'd attained his current accomplishment. But even then, there were still many mysteries in his heart that couldn't be solved. The reason was that there were too few records of the path in the world, and it was practically something that could only be chanced upon by luck. So it was bound to be impossible for Lin Sun to refer to and figure out. But it was different now. As he comprehended, A variety of different paths appeared before him, and they transformed into different experiences and insights that surged into his heart. It caused him to feel as if he was studying a profound scripture. Even though it wasn't a specific technique or inheritance, his gains were even greater. But in next to no time, Lin Sun frowned. His comprehension from the true martial realm all the way to the reincarnation development realm was very smooth, and it caused him to be infatuated and unravel the mysteries in his heart. But his comprehension stopped abruptly when he arrived at the reincarnation development realm. Wait, the other experts are still comprehending. In this way, one's cultivation should be able to sense the experience and insights of that realm. For example, I've already stepped foot on the path of the apex, so I'm naturally able to comprehend all sorts of insights and experiences related to the path of the apex while comprehending. This Taoist field is simply too miraculous. It's surely the place of inheritance left behind by the ancient sages. Lin Sun pondered and sighed with emotion in his heart. This kind of inheritance did not have a specific method, nor did it have a specific Tao art. Instead, it was a kind of cultivation, knowledge, and experience. Obviously, the ancient sages did this because they did not want others to copy their Tao path and walk down their old path. Instead, it provided a type of experience that could be referenced and figured out, and it guided cultivators to verify their own path of the Tao. If one didn't attain that realm, then one was bound to be unable to comprehend the experience of that realm. Since there were no passages of comprehension that exceeded the scope of the reincarnation development realm, Lin Sun didn't insist on it. His mind was clear as he started to carefully sort out his cultivation realm. As time went by, the void fluctuated continuously, taking away the experts one by one and making them disappear from the Taoist field. Some were lost in comprehension and lost control of their state of mind, so they were eliminated. Some had reached the limit of what they could bear in comprehension, but still insisted on persisting. Going too far was as bad as falling short, so they fell into the barrier of obsession and were eliminated. There were even some who hallucinated in comprehension, thinking that they had found the most perfect path of the apex, but they fell into the barrier of obsession and were eliminated. This was the path of comprehension. Although it was an opportunity, not everyone could enjoy it. In the end, there were only a dozen or so people left in the huge Taoist field. Lin Sun was the first to come to his senses. He had completely comprehended and integrated all the insights and experiences with his own path of the Tao. He had a complete understanding of the essence of the apex, so there was no point in further comprehension. He immediately stood up, no longer reluctant to stay. When the others noticed his performance, they were all shocked. This was because Lin Sun was the first expert who hadn't been eliminated after comprehension. What did this mean? Demon God Lin had been cultivating for so long. Was his comprehension of the reincarnation developing realm already comparable to that of the ancient saints in this realm? In fact, when Lin Sun was in the secret land of Demon Saint in the ultimate, he had reconstructed each of his cultivation realms and approached perfection, so he didn't have to spend a lot of effort to improve his own path of Tao. All of his previous comprehensions were based on confirmation and reference, drawing parallels to comprehend things by analogy. Thus, he was able to completely comprehend it in no time. Many other experts hadn't set foot on the apex, so there were many flaws in their cultivation. Therefore, they needed to spend more time to figure out and deduce when comprehending. Outside Kangwu Mountain, as the experts who had been eliminated in the Taoist field walked out one after another, it also caused quite a stir, and the clamor of discussion was endless. At the same time, the news that Lin Sun had killed Sha Luchan, Zhongli Wuji, Lei Qianjun, and the others was also brought out by some experts, which immediately caused a great commotion. A white jade thunder lion was sitting there expressionlessly, its eyes extremely cold. However, everyone felt a chill that pierced their skin, as if a sharp blade was pressed against their back, giving them goosebumps. The white jade thunder lion was Lei Qianjuan's mount, but it was also his protector with monstrous cultivation. Now that the news of Lei Qianjuan's death had spread, it was furious. Some other big shots revealed strange expressions, and their eyes seemed to have lightning running in them. The aura of destruction filled the air, making people's hearts palpitate. This demon god Lin should be killed. The green flame Kylan said coldly, its whole body steaming with green divine flames as if it was burning. It was Mu Jianting's protector. Although Mu Jianting hadn't been eliminated so far, the green flame Kylan couldn't accept the fact that it had been defeated by Lin Sun twice in succession. Even important figures like Granny Golden Crane felt their hearts stir. A mere demonic god Lin had actually started a massacre on the ancient Dao green lamp tree. They couldn't calm down after seeing several peerless figures die. Even if he's alive, he'll have to come out eventually. A black jade dragon elephant let out a roar that shook the heavens and made countless practitioners tremble. He was Zhongli Wuji's protector. A sharp killing intent spread through the area. All the cultivators realized that fiend god Lin had broken through the heavens this time and was in big trouble. The battle on the green lamp tree is a matter of life and death. Should demon god Lin be hated and suppressed just because he killed some peerless figures? Some people felt indignant for Lin Sun, thinking that those big forces were too overbearing and were obviously bullying Lin Sun because he had no background. If Ziwei sword Devil Yichen from the Big Dipper world was still here, these big shots would have to bear with it and wouldn't dare to say anything. In the final analysis, they just think that Lin Sun is easy to bully. The crowd discussed. No matter what, this matter was destined to spread throughout the West Hung world, and the young demon god Lin Sun would be famous all over the world. In the Taoist field, the atmosphere was solemn. Only a dozen or so strong practitioners were left, all meditating in meditation, trying their best to understand the essence of enlightenment. Lin Sun wandered around the Taoist field, observing every blade of grass and tree in the field. The Taoist field was spacious, flowing with the mottled air of time. It was extremely ancient. Lin Sun couldn't imagine that when the only bronze flower bud bloomed, it would evolve into such an ancient Taoist field full of mystery. The rumors should be true. All those years ago, there was definitely an ancient orthodoxy where all saints gathered on Azure Parasol Mountain. Regardless of whether it's the 5 stages of the Tao discussion or the ancient path's green lantern tree, both of them are tests for their successors. Perhaps only the successors who passed the test could be regarded as the real disciples of the ancient orthodoxy and inherit its mantle. But, since there were saints in this orthodoxy, why did it disappear in the long river of history and not be known by people? Even the rumor didn't leave a trace. It's too abrupt for it to disappear. Also, if this orthodoxy really existed in ancient times, what was the name of the sect? Lin Sun thought of what he had experienced after entering the Kangwu mountain, feeling that this place was unusual and full of mystery. Clang! Just as Lin Sun was thinking, an ancient and ethereal bell rang between heaven and earth. Chapter 925. The sound of the bell was drawn out and spread out like a ripple. In an instant, all the experts who were meditating were awakened, and their expressions more or less still carried a trace of reluctance. Obviously, they'd benefited greatly from their comprehension, but unfortunately, it had stopped at this moment. At the same time, everyone noticed that along with the sound of the bell, the ancient dojo vanished like a bubble. What entered everyone's field of vision was an ancient and mottled Tao platform. There was a table at the top of the platform, and there was only a lone bronze bell on it. The bell flowed with a bronze sheen, and the markings of the Grand Tao were densely branded on the bell. It was extremely miraculous. All of a sudden, the hearts of everyone shook fiercely, and their gazes were extremely fervent. The first fortune. That bronze bell was the greatest creation on the green lamp tree. Without even thinking, one could tell that its origin was bound to be amazing. At this moment, everyone understood that listening and comprehending the Grand Tao was a test, and only the experts who persisted until the end were qualified to compete for this ultimate fortune. Bang! Many experts couldn't help but start climbing the platform. But as soon as they took a step forward, a terrifying pressure surged. It pressed down on everyone to the point of almost suffocating. But no one flinched. All of them gritted their teeth and circulated their cultivation to the limit. The Tao platform was ancient and mottled, and it was constructed from mysterious green divine materials. It was impossible to fly, so one could only climb it step by step. It seemed to be only a distance of 300 m, but it was actually more difficult than ascending the heavens. A terrifying restrictive force surged on it, and it didn't just suppress one's cultivation, it even suppressed the strength of one's soul. But even if it was so difficult, it still couldn't stop everyone's determination to climb it. On the contrary, all the experts at this moment didn't hold back at all. Lin Sun moved as well. He climbed step by step while withstanding the terrifying pressure. His entire body was suffused with brilliant radiance, and his essence, energy, and spirit were seething and circulating. His speed couldn't be said to be slow, nor could it be said to be fast, but it was steady. To everyone's surprise, as he climbed step by step, the Tao platform beneath his feet seemed to be ceaselessly growing larger and larger, more and more majestic in the end. The entire Tao platform was like a divine mountain that supported the heavens and the earth. It was vast, boundless, and solemn to the extreme. As everyone climbed up, they noticed that they were getting further and further away from the top of the Tao platform. It was too miraculous. It was just 100-foot tall platform, yet it concealed profound secrets that were extremely profound. When one ascended it, it was like ascending the heavens, and it was extremely shocking. Fortunately, the remaining dozen or so experts were all dazzling figures among peerless figures. The fact that they were able to last until now proved their strength. But now, when climbing the Tao platform, there were no incidents of being eliminated. Time passed by. Everyone withstood the boundless pressure and gradually approached the top of the Tao platform, and they clearly saw the bronze bell on the table at the top of the Tao platform. It was extremely dazzling, 15 centimeters tall, and a bronze luster flowed about it. The body of the bell was branded with dense and obscure Tao markings, and it seemed extremely ancient. When looked at from afar, it actually gave off a supreme aura that could suppress the world and shake the earth. There was no doubt that the might of this treasure could shock the heavens. It was also at this moment that the atmosphere suddenly became tense and murderous because they were about to reach the peak of the Tao platform. For the sake of seizing that bronze bell, a horrifying and bloody battle was bound to erupt. As expected, danger soon erupted. Some of the experts who were lagging behind were anxious and directly attacked, wanting to disturb the experts who were ahead. Bang! The disciple of Mishra Palace, Luo Jia, flipped her white hand, causing a dazzling bottle to appear above her, and it emanated eternal divine radiance that collided with Li Qinghuan. Divine radiance erupted between them. It was Li Qinghuan who attacked first because Luo Jia was right in front of him. Luo Jia was like a solid wall that obstructed his path to seize fortune. Kill! Yu Lingkong and a gray-robed young man encountered each other, and an intense battle ensued. The gray-robed young man was called Shang Jia. He was from an ancient clan, and he was a peerless figure that led the way in Westworld. To everyone's surprise, even when facing a figure like Yu Lingkong, Shang Jia's display wasn't inferior at all, and he seemed to be extraordinarily formidable. These were peerless figures. Every single one of them concealed their strength deeply. Perhaps they'd held back earlier, but for the sake of seizing the first fortune, they'd erupted with their greatest ability. Pooh! In an instant, the clothes on Yu Lingkong's shoulder were torn apart, and a thin line of blood was left behind on his skin. He'd actually been injured, and he'd been swept by a golden spear in Shang Jia's hand. However, the sword in Yu Lingkong's hand clanged, and it blasted the golden spear away at the same time. It shook Shang Jia to the point his palm split open, causing blood to spray out, and his bones to reveal a ghastly sight. This strike seemed to be evenly matched, yet comparatively speaking, Shang Jia had suffered a slight disadvantage. But even then, it was still shocking. Shang Jia hadn't revealed anything dazzling earlier, yet he'd erupted with such combat strength now, and it was truly too unbelievable. The battle erupted, and it affected everyone. Even Ji Xingyao suffered a blow, and she was fighting a Night Devil Clan expert with black wings on his back. The Night Devil Clan was an extremely mysterious clan. According to rumor, their ancestor was a spirit that was born from a devil abyss during the ancient times, and they grasped the mysterious innate ability of the Night Devil Thorn. They were terrifying to the extreme. On the other hand, the Night Devil Clan expert that was fighting Ji Xingyao was called Shiyun. He had handsome features, dark gray skin, and green and glossy eyes that seemed as if devilish flames were burning within them. Moreover, his entire body emanated a horrifying and devilish aura. Just like Shang Jia, Shiyun had always acted alone before this, and his display didn't draw the attention of others. But at this moment, both of them revealed shocking combat strength. This caused Lin Sun to be shocked in his heart. He realized that it wasn't just him who'd been concealing his strength all along the way, and these peerless figures had similarly been holding back. They were extremely shrewd. Swoosh! A scarlet-red tongue swept over from behind Lin Sun, and he was shocked in his heart. He didn't hesitate to execute the body-bearing strike to resist it. That was a peerless figure of the Bash clan, and his name was Ba Shanshui. He had a rather handsome appearance, but his moves were extremely vicious and disgusting. His snake tongue was like a waterfall, and scarlet-red liquid flowed on it. It contained a toxic poison, and once one was struck by it, one's soul would suffer severe corrosion. It was the most difficult to deal with. Rumble! The snake's tongue was knocked flying, but Ba Shanshui was extremely decisive. Once his attack failed, he immediately retreated swiftly and charged towards the other side. If Lin Sun chased after him, he would lose the best opportunity to charge up the platform. Obviously, Ba Shanshui had noticed this, and that was why he dared to attack Lin Sun fearlessly. "If I catch you, I'll cut off your tongue." Lin Sun's gaze was piercingly cold as he glanced at Ba Shanshui, and he really didn't chase after him. The platform was grand and lofty, but there was only a single stone staircase leading to the top. When a group of experts charged up the staircase, it was bound to be inevitable that conflict would erupt. Because no one was willing to retreat, and similarly, no one was able to tolerate others getting ahead of them. In next to no time, Lin Sun and Ji Xingyao encountered each other. The latter's clear eyes glared at him, and she gritted her sparkling and translucent teeth before swinging her hand and striking out a sword seal. Swish! The pure and holy sword intent was only 3 inches long, and it condensed into a sword seal that gushed with a peerless sharpness. It seemed as if it could pierce through time and annihilate all living things. The 3-live sword seal. This was a peerless secret technique that could cut off the karma of the past, present, and future. All the sword intent condensed into a seal had the power to turn the world upside down. As early as in the Pine Mist martial arts field in Yen capital, Lin Sun had experienced the horror of this unique technique, but he didn't expect that as soon as he met Ji Xingyao, she would attack him so fiercely. This girl must be taking revenge. Lin Sun's face darkened, but he finally restrained himself. He retreated to one side and rushed up the platform from another direction. A trace of contempt appeared on Ji Xingyao's incomparably beautiful face. She slightly raised her sparkling and snow-white chin, and she was as proud as a high and mighty fairy. But in Lin Sun's eyes, this was a provocative gesture. Lin Sun gnashed his teeth with hatred. This proud girl was so irritating. He immediately transmitted his voice to her and sighed. "Xingyao, if you're so ruthless, I'm afraid I can't help you keep some secrets." "You?" Ji Xingyao widened her clear eyes and raised her eyebrows. Her fair and pretty face was full of anger. She couldn't wait to kill this bastard. He was so shameless. How could he threaten her with this at such a critical moment? Did he really think that she would give in? If you dare to do this, I'll definitely kill you. Ji Xingyao's slender figure was filled with holy and fierce sword intent. She was like an angry fairy with an intimidating momentum. I'm not easily intimidated, Lin Sun snorted. As they spoke, both of them sprinted with all their strength without any delay. Soon, Lin Sun met a descendant of the Pure Land of Longevity. It was a charming woman in a fiery red crane cloak. Lin Sun still remembered that when he met Bai Lingshi in front of the pavilion of spring and autumn, this woman had ridiculed him. But Lin Sun didn't have the mood to pay attention to her at this time. He rushed forward quickly. Back off. The name of the woman in the fiery red crane cloak was Yan Xia. Seeing Lin Sun passing by her and rushing to the top of the platform, she seemed to be extremely unwilling to give up. She raised her hand and waved a fiery red spiritual whip, smashing it hard at Lin Sun's back. Humph! Lin Sun wouldn't show any mercy. He launched an all-out attack and fought with her. In the end, Yan Xia let out a shrill scream. In a few breaths, she was punched away by Lin Sun, and her body fell down the platform. How dare you! Demon God Lin, you're courting death! In other directions, several descendants of the Pure Land of Longevity shouted angrily when they saw this. They didn't hide their killing intent at all. What? You want to play too? Lin Sun's black eyes were full of coldness. Let's rush to the platform first, and then we'll settle accounts with him. Yu Lingkong said indifferently in the distance. Her voice was calm, but there was a trace of palpitating coldness in it. Seeing that they were about to reach the platform, the battles and conflicts became more and more intense. Everyone had to rush up the platform against the terrifying pressure, and at the same time they had to fight. The situation was extremely dangerous. Soon, some experts were killed. It was Ba Shanshu of the Snake Tribe in the bloodbath. Before Lin Sun could settle accounts with him, he was stabbed in the mouth by Li Qinghuan's sword. Ba Shanshu fell to the ground with blood spurting out like rain. The battle was truly too bitter. Even the peerless figures encountered great danger, and quite a few of them were even injured a long time ago. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light appeared. Lin Sun's pupils shrank abruptly, and he felt a faint tingling on his skin. Chapter 926. Puff. Lin Sun was caught off guard. Although he avoided it with ice dragon steps, his shoulder was still hit and blood burst out. Lin Sun saw clearly that his opponent was Shang Jia. He was full of fighting spirit and holding a golden spear, like a god of war. According to rumor, Shang Jia possessed extraordinary natural talent since he was born. There was a mysterious golden Tao marking on his palm, and the golden spear in his hand was formed from this Tao marking. It was said to be able to pierce through anything and was peerlessly sharp. In the previous battle with Yu Lingkong, Shang Jia showed extraordinary strength. Now, he pointed his spear at Lin Sun. Looking for trouble? Killing intent flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. Shang Jia's sudden attack made Lin Sun angry. If nothing unexpected happens, then my clan will propose marriage to the Azure Phoenix clan after the Dao Discussion Lantern Festival ends and allow Qing Lian to become my wife. Killing you now just happens to be a betrothal gift to display my sincerity. Shang Jia's answer was simple, indifferent and cold. So it's for Qing Lian Lin Sun said to himself. The two rushed to each other and began to fight. Boom! A fierce battle broke out. Only a moment later, Shang Jia was bleeding. His shoulder was cut by a broken blade, and one of his arms was almost cut off. But in just a moment, Shang Jia's injury was healed, showing his terrifying recovery ability. Lin Sun's eyes were deep and cold. He realized that Shang Jia was a seriously underestimated opponent who was even stronger than Mu Jianting, Zhongli Wuji and Sha Luchan. If this is all you've got, I'll kill you later. Shang Jia didn't fight anymore. He chose to retreat and climb to the top of the Taoist altar from the other side. Obviously, he realized that he couldn't kill Lin Sun in a short time, so he didn't want to waste time. How arrogant! Lin Sun's eyes were cold. He resisted the urge to chase after Shang Jia. Shang Jia didn't want to be delayed either. The first fortune was at the top of the Taoist altar. Compared with it, everything else was trivial. Not long after, Lin Sun met another old acquaintance, Mu Jianting. Noticing Lin Sun's approach, Mu Jianting's face suddenly changed. Before Lin Sun could attack, he stepped back. Obviously, he was traumatized by Lin Sun last time. He was so afraid that he didn't dare to confront Lin Sun face to face again. Lin Sun ignored the loser and continued to rush forward. This was, without a doubt, a path of blood that led to the first natural luck. A group of exceptional figures were slaughtering each other, a bloody battle erupting. On the way, even Lin Sun was inevitably stained with blood. It could be imagined how fierce the battle was. In the end, Lin finally set foot on it, but the pressure was even greater. Because almost at the same time, peerless figures such as Yu Linkong, Ji Xingyao, Shang Jia and Shiyun arrived one after another. However, when they truly arrived at the peak of the Dao platform, the conflict had temporarily stopped, and both sides were nervously confronting each other while taking precautions. At the center was an ancient table, and there was a bronze bell on it. It was branded with dense markings of the Grand Dao, and it flowed with dazzling green radiance. This was the first fortune, and it possessed a temptation that was irresistible to any cultivator in the world. But at the same time, if one wanted to seize good fortune, they would face fatal danger. Almost everyone knew that whoever dared to be the first to rush out would become the target of all and be attacked by all the other experts. In this way, no one dared to act rashly. I have a suggestion. Let's kill Lin Sun first, and then we'll compete for this bronze bell. What do you think? In the tense atmosphere, Yu Linkong spoke. He glanced at the crowd indifferently and finally fixed his eyes on Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the eyes of peerless figures such as Mu Jianting, Shang Jia and Li Qinghuan became subtle, and they seemed to be a little moved. Of course, we have no objection. At this time, in addition to Yu Linkong, there were also 3 successors of the Pure Land of Longevity, including Bai Lingshi. When they heard Yu Linkong's proposal, 2 of them agreed without hesitation. As for Bai Lingshi, she pursed her lips and said nothing. Her beautiful and clear face seemed to be calm, but in fact, she was extremely anxious and worried. She didn't expect that as soon as they stepped on the Dao platform, Yu Linkong would take the lead to launch an attack on Lin Sun, and even unite others to deal with Lin Sun. Some people, such as Ji Xingyao, Loka and Shiyun, remained silent. But anyway, because of Yu Linkong's words, Lin Sun was suddenly pushed to the teeth of the storm, and was in a dangerous situation. Is this all the successors of the Pure Land of Longevity can do? It seems that Yu Linkong, are just SOSO if you want to kill me, Lin Sun, with the help of others. Lin Sun smiled, and his black eyes were dark and cold. Naive. I just don't want you to delay everyone's time to seize the good fortune. Yu Linkong, dressed in a jade robe, with his black hair hanging loosely, looked indifferent and ruthless. Bullshit, if you are not afraid, why do you make such a shameless suggestion? Lin Sun didn't hide his contempt. The 2 confronted each other completely. One was a peerless figure of the young generation of the Pure Land of Longevity in the South Xian world, who had long been famous in the world. His foundation, combat capability, and means were all top-notch in the world, suppressing his peers. The other was Demon God Lin, who had just risen in recent half a year and walked out of bloody killing. He had killed many talents and made a great name for himself. Undoubtedly, the confrontation between these 2 peerless figures was more eye-catching. Clang! Yu Linkong flicked his finger and lightly knocked on the Taoist's sword in his hand. The blade that was as bright and translucent as jade emitted a dazzling light that was cold and terrifying. Since you think so, then I'll kill you now so that you don't die with regrets. Yu Lingkong spoke calmly without a trace of emotion. He was indeed very aloof, and his state of mind was like a rock. This was a kind of restrained conceit and an invincible and disdainful demeanor. The atmosphere on the Taoist platform was oppressive and tense, and everyone's mind was drawn. Before the first good fortune, Yu Lingkong wanted to suppress Lin Sun. This was indeed unexpected, but it was reasonable if one thought about it carefully. Because the Lantern Discussion Conference had come to the final moment to decide the winner. Moreover, Yu Lingkong had said that he would kill Lin Sun with his own hands when they were at the Fuchin Sea. To be honest, I've really put up with you for a long time. You've provoked me time and time again. Do you really think you're invincible and can do whatever you want? Lin Sun's expression was very calm, and his tone was extremely serious. Since you've come to me, then I'll fulfill your wish and send you on your way. Swoosh! The void trembled violently. Yu Lingkong didn't say another word. He held the ancient Taoist sword in his hand and slashed forward. It was like a flash of bright lightning that illuminated the world. The boundless power of Taoism was like a tide that seethed and surged amidst the fierce sword intent, and it revealed numerous shocking phenomena that were boundlessly terrifying. As soon as the sword intent attacked, it possessed the peerless demeanor of seizing the energy of the world and causing everything in the world to dim in comparison. Lin Sun's eyes were deep, and the qi in his body circulated at will. At this moment, he pushed his strength to the peak and drew out the broken sword to meet the attack. Bang! In the void, it seemed as if thunder had exploded, causing the Taoist platform to shake and buzz. The terrifying sword intent and saber light swept out, and it was filled with a scene of destruction. In an instant, the two of them fought fiercely like the sun and the moon were competing for brilliance. It was also like two primordial divine mountains were colliding fiercely. The eyes of the other experts narrowed, and they retreated subconsciously because they didn't want to be involved in it. The two successors of the Pure Land of Longevity were ready to make a move. They seemed to intend to join in and kill Lin Sun together with Yu Lingkong. But in the end, they didn't attack immediately because they firmly believed that Yu Lingkong didn't need their help at all to kill Lin Sun easily. They knew too well how powerful Yu Lingkong was. He could be called the most dazzling figure in the entire southern Xian world. Seeing that it was only Yu Lingkong who attacked alone, Bai Lingshi secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But then she couldn't help worrying about gains and losses, because she also knew how terrible Yu Lingkong was. Could Lin Sun really resist him? Ji Xingyao was dressed in a plain dress. She was as cold as snow, and her figure was peerless. Her clear eyes were filled with frightening divine light as she stared at the two people who were fighting. Her incomparably beautiful face was as tranquil as an ancient well. On the other side, Loka stood silently. Her whole body was overflowing with holy aura like that of an immortal phoenix. A vase floated above her head, suffused with divine light, and bathed her in it. It was awe-inspiring. Besides her, Shang Jia, who was extraordinarily talented and had golden Taoist markings on his palm, Shi Yun, Li Qinghuan, Mu Jianting, and the others of the Night Demon clan were glaring fiercely at Lin Sun, and their gazes were like bolts of lightning. However, they were more concerned about the first fortune on the table not far away. At this moment, both Yu Lingkong and Lin Sun were busy fighting, and this undoubtedly provided them with a good opportunity to fight for the fortune. Bang! A great battle erupted. Lin Sun was domineering and arrogant, and he was like a demon that had descended to the world. The broken blade was activated, and it was lustrous like a dream while its murderous aura covered the heavens and the earth. But Yu Lingkong was even more domineering. He seemed as if he'd walked out from a holy land. Every single move he made caused Taoist intent to rumble and sword light to shoot out. It was brilliant and dazzling to the extreme. At this moment, someone finally couldn't help but make a move. It was Shi Yun from the Night Demon clan, and he intended to seize this opportunity to seize the first fortune. Swoosh. At practically the exact same time, Ji Xingyao moved as well. Her footsteps fluttered, and she was even faster than Shi Yun. But halfway there, she was stopped. It was Mu Jianting and Li Qinghuan. The two of them didn't fight for the fortune, and instead attacked Ji Xingyao from different directions. Ji Xingyao's clear eyes focused. She instantly discerned that these two fellows had obviously formed an alliance with Shi Yun, and they'd asked Shi Yun to seize the fortune while they were responsible for stopping the others. Attack! However, Ji Xingyao didn't panic, and a wisp of coldness appeared on the corners of her mouth instead. As she spoke, the figure of Loka who'd been standing silently flashed, and she soared into the sky like an immortal phoenix. She moved through the void, and she arrived before Shi Yun to stop him. Obviously, Ji Xingyao and Loka were secretly joining forces. This sort of continuous unexpected changes was absolutely sufficient to astound anyone. Who could have imagined that these peerless figures would actually choose to join forces at the same time? Chapter 927. Boom. The white jade bottle that Luojia took out gushed out a blinding silver divine light. It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down in torrent. Its power was so terrifying that Shi Yun's expression changed. He had no choice but to give up his good fortune and turn around to counterattack. Whoosh. At the same time, Mu Jianting and the other peerless figures made a move as well. All of them intended to seize this opportunity to seize the first fortune on the table. Instantly, the entire area shook and a chaotic battle broke out. It really was too intense and chaotic to the extreme. Numerous peerless figures hadn't just utilized their strongest abilities, they'd even formed alliances in secret, causing the situation to reveal a strange and dangerous feeling. However, the most intense one was the duel between Lin Sun and Yu Lingkong. Both of them were filled with killing intent, and they wanted to kill each other as quickly as possible. As soon as the battle began, they used their killer move. On the other hand, even though the other experts were in a chaotic battle, when they realized that they were bound to be unable to seize the first fortune in a short period of time, they instantly became cautious and held back. They were worried that the Sandpiper and Clam would be the third party that would benefit from the battle. When they witnessed the duel between Lin Sun and Yu Lingkong, many strong practitioners wished that the two would die together. Rumble! Divine radiance rumbled between the two of them while the energy of Tao insights swept out, and they fought intensely and displayed an unprecedented battle. What demon god Lin? He's nothing much. Yu Lingkong's voice was indifferent. Like a peerless sword immortal, he was emotionless and cold. A snow-white Taoist sword soared into the sky and slashed down with dazzling radiance. The sword light was full of obscure Taoism, deducing a grand and extremely terrible scene. It cut off a lock of Lin Sun's hair and made his skin tingle. Lin Sun dodged the attack with frost steps, manipulating the broken sword to display the profound meaning of 6 cuts of Tianyuan. Here, sword qi crisscrossed, blade light crisscrossed, shaking the world. The nearby experts had no choice but to move aside because such a collision was too world-shocking, and once they were affected by it, they were bound to be implicated. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun executed the 9 strikes of shaking heaven and charged out explosively. His fists were simple and ethereal, dazzling and resplendent, and they charged towards Yu Lingkong's face with peerlessly ferocious and all-conquering might. Divine light shot out from Yu Lingkong's eyes, and she seemed to be rather disdainful. She didn't dodge at all and went head-on against it. His palm and fingers were like blades as he slashed out. Whoosh! A violet palm blade flashed out. It was tyrannical and terrifying, and it surged with terrifying light. The hearts of many nearby experts shook as their gazes were drawn over. They realized that this was a type of peerless Tao art that was boundlessly terrifying. Caged dragon purple light saber. It faintly seemed as if a violet-colored dragon had charged out from within the abyss prison, and it emitted a dragon roar as it struggled free of the shackles of the heavens and the earth. Its dragon claws could crush the mountains and rivers, and its might shook the world. This was the ultimate technique that was passed down from the Yu clan. It was the perfect combination of the Dragon Battle Tao and the Purple Dragon scripture. Together, they formed this ultimate technique. Now, as soon as this move was executed, violet light shot into the sky and formed the image of a true dragon soaring into the sky, and it instantly awed everyone present. Lin Sun's pupils shrank as he realized the terror of this blow. Obviously, the opponent had extraordinary attainments in martial art. Not only was his swordsmanship amazing, but he also mastered many peerless arts. The distance was too close for him to dodge. Lin Sun's whole body roared, an endless power of Tao burst out to fight head-on. In the blink of an eye, the profound meaning of the 9 strikes of shaking heaven was completely activated in his fist force. It shook the heavens and the earth, and its momentum was majestic. Boom! The void was suddenly torn into pieces and collapsed like a fragile piece of cloth, and the roar was deafening. The expressions of many experts changed, and they retreated once more. The confrontation this time was too breathtaking and terrifying. Merely the aura was enough to make one's heart palpitate and make one's hair stand on end. Even Ji Xingyao, Loka, and the others revealed shocked expressions. As existences at the same level, they could feel the power of this attack, and it was believed that it had reached the extreme level. In the reincarnation development realm, this was undoubtedly the peak confrontation in the world, and it represented the highest level that practitioners of the same generation could attain. In the battlefield, both Lin Sun and Yu Lingkong retreated. The former's body shook and his skin trembled slightly. The latter's black hair fluttered in the wind, and a wisp of redness appeared on his handsome face as his qi and blood surged. Obviously, no one had gained the upper hand in this collision. But even so, it was still shocking. Demon God Lin was actually strong enough to fight Yu Lingkong? This was unimaginable. The killing power of the caged dragon purple light saber was amazing, and it was difficult to defend against. But this time, Lin Sun had resisted it head-on, which was really shocking. For both Lin Sun and Yu Lingkong, this confrontation surprised them, and then the killing intent in their hearts grew stronger. Whoosh! In the void, the Taoist sword and the broken blade were still fighting, but Yu Lingkong moved first. His figure was like an arrow leaving the bow, bursting with purple light. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched down in the void. In an instant, he displayed another peerless Taoist method. The fist force was surrounded by dazzling purple thunder and lightning, and even the void collapsed. The murderous intent was shocking. This, many experts gasped in astonishment. Purple extreme sky-suppressing fist. The successors of the Pure Land of Immortality were all excited, and their eyes were full of admiration. This was a peerless Taoist method from the Pure Land of Immortality. It integrated the purple thunder Taoism into the fist force, and it had the destructive power to destroy yin and yang, and destroy all living beings. The hearts of the crowd trembled. Yu Lingkong was really too horrible, and his foundation was amazing. Both the caged dragon purple light saber and the purple extreme sky-suppressing fist were peerless Taoist method. Ordinary peerless people could dominate the world by mastering any one of them. But now they were all mastered by Yu Lingkong. That was why Yu Lingkong was so terrifying. Boom! The void collapsed and the turbulence collapsed. Yu Lingkong was surrounded by purple light, and his fist force was surrounded by thick and crystal electric arc. He attacked Lin Sun from the void. Strong, fierce, disdainful. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He took a step forward, and the snow-white hornless dragon soared into the sky. At the same time, he displayed the Bhashya prohibition and the hornless dragon seal. The two kinds of secret Upanishads merged at this moment. They had the power to confine everything, and the power to destroy the universe. When he was in the extreme realm, his cultivation of martial arts underwent an earth-shaking transformation, and he was completely sublimated to the full completion of the extreme realm. He had already mastered the Upanishads of Taoist methods he had mastered, and he could use them with ease. There was a charm of returning to nature and turning the rotten into the magical. With a bang, the two fought with each other again. In an instant they had exchanged hundreds of moves, and then they were shaken back at the same time and separated in the void. Lin Sun's handsome face was pale. On the other hand, Yu Lingkong staggered and blue veins appeared on his forehead. Both of them were shocked, because they had both displayed their killing moves, but the result was still the same, which made them become serious. They looked at each other, and their killing intent became more and more terrible. Although you can be the king of a realm on the way to the top, you are doomed to be inferior to me. Yu Lingkong's eyebrows were full of disdain and indifference. As he spoke, he condensed a purple palm print in his hands. It was like a lotus, and it contained a strange Taoist aura. Buzz, the palm print was like a mountain, and it seemed to be able to crush everything. This was another peerless Taoist method. It was called the Wishful Treasure Seal, and it glowed brilliantly and destroyed everything. The hearts of all the experts in the distance that were engaged in a chaotic battle shook even more. They were unable to imagine if they were to fight Yu Lingkong, and they wondered if they would be a match for him. This fellow could simply be said to be heaven-defying and brilliant. At this moment, Lin Sun became extremely calm instead. His heart was clear, as if it was untainted by even a speck of dust. He stretched his body and deduced the profundities of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon and the 9 strikes of shaking the heavens. All his moves revealed an ancient and simple aura, yet they were completely natural, and they conformed with the Taoist method and drew upon the might of the heavens and the earth. The two of them fought fiercely once more. The void there was in disorder, and different shocking phenomena appeared. It was shocking. You can't do it. Yu Lingkong was furious in his heart. He felt that he had lost face after attacking Lin Sun for so long. A young man from the mortal world had fought with him until now. If news of this were to spread, what would others think of him? Bang! In an instant, he executed various Taoist methods. His entire body was suffused with a purple divine radiance, and he seemed to be capable of destroying everything and sweeping through the 9 heavens. The enraged Yu Lingkong's power became more and more terrifying. He was like a deity descending from the sky, and his power overwhelmed everyone present. But at the same time, Lin Sun's aura also changed. He operated the secret method of Yazi's wrath, and his combat strength suddenly soared. In an instant, he was like a chaotic furnace, pressing down and breaking Yu Lingkong's defense forcefully. Bang! Yu Lingkong's right arm was numb. Even though he had blocked the attack, the clothes on his arm suddenly burst into pieces. His skin was torn and bleeding inch by inch, and an indescribable pain spread. His entire right arm was almost broken. The other strongmen were shocked. Demon Lin was the first to injure Yu Lingkong? Since the beginning of the battle, the two of them had been evenly matched. However, at this moment, Demon Lin was the first to break the balance and injure Yu Lingkong. Although it was only a flesh wound, which could not affect Yu Lingkong's combat strength at all, there was no doubt that Demon Lin had a slight upper hand in the battle on the surface. This was more and more unbelievable. Yu Lingkong was born in a family of sages. He was apprenticed to the pure land of longevity. He had great luck since he was a child. He had never been defeated since he started his cultivation. He was like an invincible legend. On the other hand, Demon Lin came from the barren mortal world. He had no one to rely on, no sect, and was a loner. In terms of identity, status, and origin, he could not be compared with Yu Lingkong at all. It could be said that the gap between them was like heaven and earth. But now, such a thing had happened. How could this not be shocking? Even Ji Xingyao and Loco were greatly touched. You actually made me bleed? Yu Lingkong seemed to be a little incredulous. Then his expression became more and more indifferent. He was obviously angry. His black hair fluttered in the wind. He looked up to the sky and roared. The sound wave was like thunder, making people's souls tremble. In an instant, his imposing aura changed once more. His eyes actually transformed into a bright golden color, and they surged with terrifying and strange markings. Boom! 6 black steels appeared around him, all of which were branded with twisted and strange golden Taoist patterns. As soon as they appeared, a kind of horrible aura that could suppress heaven and earth spread out. The Demon Seal Tablet. Ji Xingyao's pupils constricted. This was a group of terrifying and strange ancient treasures. They enveloped the body and were said to be capable of trapping and killing all living beings. Chapter 928. Cut! Lin Sun shouted as soon as Yu Lingkong took out the 6-body demon seal tablet. In the void, the white broken blade burst into blazing light and displayed the profound meaning of burning sun cut. The Taoist sword was cut into 2 pieces in an instant and fell to the ground with a clang. Hiss! The sound of people gasping was heard in the field. There was no doubt that the broken blade was a peerless magic weapon. Even Yu Lingkong's Taoist sword was cut in half. Yu Lingkong looked more and more indifferent, but he didn't care anymore. The 6 black steels floating around him burst out golden Taoist patterns, which intertwined in the void and rumbled and crushed him. Lin Sun used the broken blade to fight against it. When the two collided, there was an ear-piercing sound of metal colliding, which made people's souls feel stinging. All the experts had solemn expressions on their faces. Up till now, the two of them had been constantly changing their techniques and their auras were constantly rising. Every single one of their attacks could be said to be earth-shattering and shocking. There was no doubt that in the reincarnation developing realm, both of them had tapped their potential to the extreme and stepped on the peak of the path. They were the strongest in this realm. After a round of collision, Lin Sun was forced to step back. The 6-body demon seal tablet was full of terrifying killing power, which was even stronger than the supreme weapon of kingcraft. Yu Lingkong was also in a difficult situation. The broken blade was so sharp that it could destroy everything. It left several bloody marks on his body and blood seeped out. Both of them were injured, but their aura became more and more terrible. Like 2 volcanoes erupting, they rushed into each other again. Their spirits were boiling and formed a terrible light. They fought fiercely and displayed their peerless skills. It was like a real battle between a god and a devil. The wind and clouds changed color and the void wailed. The heroes were still fighting, but their minds had been attracted by this battle and they were holding back. They all knew that under such circumstances, it was impossible to fight for the first fortune. No matter who fought for it, he would inevitably be attacked by the others. Humph! Yu Lingkong's face was gloomy. The 6 black steels floating in the void kept suppressing Lin Sun. But in the end, they couldn't kill Lin Sun completely. Yu Lingkong had to accept the reality. In the reincarnation developing realm, although he was absolutely conceited, he had to admit that his opponent was no weaker than him. This can't go on. Yu Lingkong's eyes were cold and unfathomable. Once the battle continued, then even if he was able to kill his opponent in the end, he would lose the best opportunity to fight for the first fortune. There was even a high possibility that other experts would beat them to it. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Yu Lingkong's entire person became completely different. There was a kind of divine charm that was released to the extreme. Divine light poured down from her body like a waterfall, and mysterious patterns shot out from her golden eyes. With his body as the center, the void was collapsing and sinking. It was a terrifying scene. In a trance, he was like the Son of God that had descended to the world and looked down upon the world. Whoosh! Yu Lingkong put away the celestial ascension tablet and took out an old wooden sword. There were traces of decay on it. However, as soon as the sword appeared, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Dazzling purple stars emerged and floated around the sword like a dream. A murderous aura filled the air. Not to mention the other experts, even Ji Xingyao, Luo Jia, and the others were shocked. Traces of surprise flashed through their eyes. That wooden sword was actually branded with a strand of the aura of a saint. There was no doubt that this sword was extraordinary. It had once been personally refined by a true saint, and it was tainted with the aura of a saint. Even though it was only a strand, it was sufficiently shocking. I never expected that an ant from the lower dimensions would possess such combat strength. It's truly surprising, said Yulinkong coldly. This was undoubtedly a public acknowledgement that Lin Sun possessed the ability to fight on par with him, and it was shocking. An ant? You can't even defeat an ant like me, so who do you think you are? Lin Sun didn't dodge at all and spoke tit for tat. My patience has been exhausted, and I don't have time to waste on you. I'll kill you right now and allow you to understand how great the gap between us is. Yulinkong's expression grew even more indifferent and cold. Bang! He stabbed out with his sword. Lightning interweaved while divine radiance seethed, and the image of a mighty saint actually floated up into appearance from the sword. This person's appearance was solemn and extremely vague, as if he was an illusion, but the aura he emitted was terrifying. As soon as he appeared, heaven and earth wailed as if they were submitting to him. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded and extremely shocked. Yulinkong's foundation was really too heaven-defying. He actually used some kind of taboo method, and the image of a saint appeared in one strike. This is the gap between you and me. If I had used this method from the very beginning, do you think you could have persisted until now? Yulinkong's expression was cold, and there was a kind of lofty indifference in him. This was one of his trump cards. In the past, he almost never used it because he was almost invincible by relying on his own combat strength. But now, in order to kill Lin Sun, he could only use it. You're using a power that doesn't belong to you to kill me. How dare you say that? Lin Sun's body glowed. An obscure and terrifying Tao surged in his body, making him seem to have transformed into an unfathomable abyss. What's this? Many strong men were frightened. The obscure Tao surged around Lin Sun like a black hole in the galaxy, as if it could swallow everything. Yulinkong has already used his trump card. Does he still plan to use his own? Or does he have no trump card at all? Many strongmen were also surprised and doubtful. It was said that Demon Lin had good fortune and a holy treasure. But until now, he had not used it, which made people suspicious. Boom! The image of a saint appeared in the sword radiance, and the terror was monstrous. In an instant, Lin Sun was drowned in the endless sword intent of holy light. Was Demon Lin going to die? Everyone's heart was in turmoil. That sword was too terrifying. The image of a saint seemed to overlook the world, with earth-shattering power. Looking at it from a distance, people felt extremely depressed and frightened. Now, Lin Sun was drowned in it before he had time to resist. People could not help but suspect that he was going to die. How could it be? Bai Lingshi bit her cherry lips, and unspeakable worry surged in her heart. She was so impulsive that she wanted to stop and rescue him several times. This guy is finally going to die. Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan, and the others were relieved. They had experienced Lin Sun's terror. If Lin Sun was still alive, they were destined to have sleepless nights. I've told you, Demon Lin is nothing. He's not even qualified to carry senior brother Yu's shoes. The two successors of the Pure Land of Longevity sneered. Ji Xingyao's clear eyes were full of luster. She was watching the battle closely. As far as she knew, that shameless guy would never be killed so easily. As the saying goes, good people don't live long, while scourges live for thousands of years. Undoubtedly, in Ji Xingyao's eyes, Lin Sun was a big scourge. At this moment, Yulinkong secretly heaved a sigh of relief. This was his trump card, but when he used it, it consumed a lot of his energy. Luckily, it was worth it. The other party was destined to be unable to escape this calamity. Boom! However, before Yulinkong could feel happy, there was a change in the battlefield. Lin Sun, who was drowned in the image of a saint, was disintegrating and obliterating the power that oppressed him. The power of the saint was so terrifying that it carried a trace of the aura of a saint. But when it came into contact with Lin Sun's body, it was strangely obliterated. Rumble, the image of the saint, began to shake violently. The aura of the saint around him was collapsing and dimming. Everyone who thought that Lin Sun was doomed to die was dumbfounded. They were shocked to the extreme. Even this couldn't kill Demon Lin? That was the aura of the saint. Just a wisp of it was unparalleled and had terrifying power. But Lin Sun resisted it and was constantly being dissolved. He's still him. He's never changed. Bai Lingshi was relieved. She felt unprecedentedly excited and relaxed. Her starry eyes were shining with extraordinary splendor. What a strange and terrifying power of the Great Way! Ji Xingyao, Loka, and others were shocked by the power of the Great Way that Lin Sun displayed. They felt an indescribable palpitation. On the other side, Yu Lingkong's face darkened. He was also shocked and found it hard to believe. Even he couldn't guarantee that he could withstand such a trump card. But now it was dissolved by Lin Sun. He couldn't accept it. He rushed out violently. His body was shining brilliantly. Even though he lost, the power that Yu Lingkong displayed was still extremely dazzling. He was like a son of God who was born with the fortune of heaven and earth. He had an overweening spirit. He shouted. His voice was like a thunderclap. Now it's my turn. Lin Sun's black eyes were emitting lightning. His power was terrifying. He rushed out violently. His fist force burst out, dazzling and blazing. Boom! Yu Lingkong reached out and crushed the fist force. At this moment, he used all kinds of means. He didn't want to delay any longer. He hoped to kill Lin Sun as soon as possible and seek the first fortune. A terrifying fluctuation emerged. A strange and ancient bronze temple appeared above his head. The temple was engraved with mysterious divine law. It reflected mysterious patterns, such as ancestors offering sacrifices and gods going on a campaign. Immortal Hall, the supreme treasure of the immortal Pure Land. All of a sudden, the altar started to shake and buzz. The expressions of the other powerhouses changed drastically. They couldn't care less about the battle and retreated one after another. No one expected that Yu Lingkong would not hesitate to use the holy treasure to deal with Lin Sun. There was no doubt that Yu Lingkong was completely determined to kill Lin Sun. He wanted to eliminate Lin Sun in one fell swoop and end this battle. Bang! A terrifying aura suffused the air. The divine law flowed within the immortal hall. It was like a ruler, and it seemed to be on the verge of shattering this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Its might caused everyone to feel suffocated. It was too terrifying and supreme. A holy treasure. How could an ordinary treasure compare to it? If it was utilized in the hands of a saint, then it was sufficient to destroy the heavens and the earth, kill gods, and instantly wipe out a mountain and river. Such a treasure could be considered as a supreme treasure in the world. Moreover, the immortal hall could be considered to be at the top amongst the ranks of holy treasures, and it possessed unbelievable might. Lin Sun, what else do you have to fight me now? Yu Lingkong's expression was piercingly cold. His long hair fluttered while divine rays shot out from his eyes. The immortal hall floated above his head, and his imposing aura was unprecedentedly strong and awe-inspiring. Chapter 929. The immortal hall floated in the air, emanating terrifying divine laws. The fluctuation was so powerful that it made everyone's heart palpitate and feel suffocated. At this moment, Yu Lingkong was like the reincarnation of a divine king. He illuminated the world and became the focal point of the entire place. Everyone's emotions were complicated, and they revealed incomparable fear. This was the immortal palace, a sacred treasure that was filled with legends. Since ancient times, it had already possessed an awe-inspiring reputation. According to legend, if this treasure was used by a saint, just a strand of its aura could destroy the world and all living things. No one expected that Yu Lingkong would not only step onto the peerless path of cultivation, but also grasp so many supreme technique. Moreover, he had so many trump cards. The old wooden sword from before was already unimaginably terrifying. It emanated a strand of the aura of a saint and transformed into the image of a saint. It was extremely powerful, but now, even a divine supreme treasure like the Immortal Hall was being unleashed. It floated above Yu Lingkong's head and emanated the power of the divine laws. Just the fluctuation of its aura was suffocating. How could they fight? Demon god Lin was destined to suffer. Once the treasure was unleashed, even a king realm cultivator had to retreat, let alone Lin Sun. This was something that the entire world knew. It was a publicly acknowledged fact since the ancient times. No matter how heaven-defying he is, he's doomed. The two heirs of the pure land of longevity became complacent again. They were shocked when they saw Lin Sun destroy the image of a saint. But now they were not worried at all. Because it was the Immortal Hall. It was the ultimate treasure of their pure land of longevity. Bai Lingshir's pretty face turned pale and her body stiffened. Her mood was the exact opposite. Her originally relaxed nerves were now extremely tense. This scourge is going to die in the end. Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan, and the others' gazes were cold. They had been waiting for this moment for a long time. As for Ji Xingyao, Luo Jia, and the others, they were secretly comparing and weighing the pros and cons. But in the end, they all believed that it was almost impossible for Lin Sun to turn the tables. Lin Sun, I told you that you're going to die this time. Yu Lingkong was like a high and mighty divine king. His eyes shot out rays of light, cold and indifferent. He had absolute confidence as if he was in control of the universe. How laughable! With your ability, you're probably unable to even bring forth a 10,000th of the might of this treasure. Aren't you a bit too arrogant? Who gave you the courage to speak like that? Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was still calm at this moment, without a trace of panic. Only his black eyes became colder and deeper. Even if it's only a 10,000th of its power, killing a bug like you is as easy as flipping my hand. Yu Lingkong was calm and unruffled. The longevity palace above his head buzzed and released terrifying power of the divine path, enveloping his entire body and protecting it. Boom! Without any delay, unwilling to give Lin any chance to catch his breath, he stepped forward and began to practice the profound meaning of caged dragon purple lightsaber and extreme purple sky suppression fist. An astonishing scene appeared. As he performed the technique, the immortal palace glowed, and the power around his body was pushed to an unprecedented level. It was truly different from before. Yu Lingkong's current might made the other powerful cultivators feel a sense of despair. Lin Sun watched the scene unfold before him and Yu Lingkong's demonstration. At the same time, he had a panoramic view of the longevity hall's aura. His expression was cold and calm. He casually took out a pagoda, which flowed with golden light and floated above his head. Everyone's pupils shrank. Could this be the sacred treasure that Lin Sun controlled? Boom! However, before they could see clearly, Yu Lingkong had already charged over. His left palm was like a blade, and a purple light shone from it. His right hand was filled with dazzling lightning, crystal clear and bright. The two supreme Taoism methods were in perfect harmony, and they were being operated at the same time. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun also moved. At this moment, he would not hold anything back. He began to perform the battle saint method, combining it with the fury of the Yazi. In his body, the divine wheel rumbled and shone brightly. It was as if a world was spinning, and it gushed out pure and strong meaning of the Great Way. The essence, qi, and spirit around him seemed to be burning, and they were released unprecedentedly. His hands were performing the 9 strikes of shaking heaven and the 9 transformations of calamity dragon. Even the spirit of his spirit was operating the meditating magic and controlling the broken blade to attack. Lin Sun's aura skyrocketed. In an instant, his entire body was overflowing with power. Kill! The two collided, and a rumble shook the sky. Rays of light shot into the sky. It was as if there were suns exploding one after another, making it impossible for people to look at them. It was too dazzling and blazing. The two peerless figures were fighting with their lives on the line. To everyone's surprise, under the pressure of the Hall of Immortals' terrifying divine way laws, a precious cauldron above Lin Sun's head was flowing with a holy rain of light, and it actually blocked the Hall of Immortals' attack. This change was too sudden. Many cultivators widened their eyes in disbelief. Even Yu Linkong was shocked. He had used all his means and even used the Hall of Immortals. He had thought that he could kill Lin Sun with one blow and completely eliminate him. But who would have thought that he still could not achieve his wish? The pagoda was filled with golden light, and its aura was sacred. It was flowing with an obscure power. Although it was not intimidating, it was not suppressed by the Hall of Immortals. Without a doubt, it was a sacred treasure. Boom! Lin Sun was no longer afraid, and he released it wantonly. The wordless pagoda had always been hidden by him because its origins were shocking and mysterious. It was completely forged from divine metal of creation, and great secrets and secrets were hidden within it. But for the sake of going against the Hall of Immortals, Lin Sun couldn't care about anything else. After a long time, he used this treasure once again, and he immediately received a miraculous result. The Hall of Immortals was no longer a threat, and it allowed Lin Sun to display his abilities. You must die no matter what. Yu Linkong's expression was filled with icy coldness and fury. He was unable to keep his composure, and he was like a furious divine king. Purple light flowed all over his body, and he circulated the peerless Tao technique he possessed to its limit. At the same time, he communicated with the Hall of Immortals with the intention of breaking through the wordless pagoda's obstruction. However, the current Lin Sun was completely different. If they were to compete in terms of battle strength, he would not fear anyone at all. Boom! Suddenly, the force of his fist was restrained, and he used the profundities of the devouring star path in his martial path. There was no dazzling divine radiance, nor was there any shocking rumbling. There was only an ancient and calm feeling that was restrained to the extreme, yet it seemed boundlessly terrifying, and it caused one's heart to tremble. Terrifying collisions reverberated incessantly on the platform, and it caused this area to fall into chaos. It was like the chaos after the Great Obliteration. Fortunately, this was happening here. If it was in the outside world, then it was bound to cause an unpredictable and terrifying calamity. Because a battle like this was a battle at the peak of the reincarnation development realm, and the strength possessed by both of them was entirely capable of easily annihilating any half-step king realm expert. Yu Linkong was shocked and furious, and he didn't possess the arrogance and supremacy from before any longer. The Hall of Immortals had been obstructed, and this caused him to feel disbelief. Moreover, the strength of Lin Sun's combat strength had exceeded his expectations. All of this was like an unexpected event that caught him off guard, and it caused Yu Linkong to be utterly unable to maintain his composure. However, he was a peerless figure that stood at the peak of the younger generation in the end. So even if he faced all sorts of unexpected events, he still didn't panic. His body emanated violet divine radiance as he circulated the violet light cage dragon blade, amethyst heaven suppression fist, and various other peerless Tao techniques with all his strength. These Tao techniques were enhanced by the Hall of Immortals, causing their might to rise explosively to an unprecedented degree, and they were vast and powerful. However, no matter how many Tao techniques he used, they were all destroyed by Lin Sun alone. The most terrifying thing was that under the stimulation of the Battle Saint technique and Yazi's fury, Lin Sun's combat technique that was infused with the power of Star Obliteration and Sky Devour seemed to have produced unimaginable might. Everywhere it passed, all attacks were instantly devoured and obliterated. Pooh! After hundreds of exchanges, Yu Linkong was shaken by the force of Lin Sun's fist, and he was pincered by the broken blade that shot through the air. He instantly suffered a great loss, and a layer of skin on his shoulder was shaved off. At the same time, he was swept by the force of Lin Sun's fist, causing his body to stagger backwards. Everyone present was astounded, and their expressions were dull. Even the Hall of Immortals had been obstructed, and it was even injured by Lin Sun. All of this seemed to be too unbelievable, and it was difficult for them to accept it for a while. You deserve to die. Yu Lingkong was furious, and his handsome face was livid. As he roared furiously, he actually executed another peerless Dao technique. Auspicious feather. A pair of golden symbols and mysterious markings shot out from his golden pupils, and they transformed into magnificent and dreamy feathers of light that carried the boundless aura of the passage of time. Even though Lin Sun dealt with this attack, a strand of his black hair was tainted, and it instantly turned snow white. After that, it lost its vitality, withered into ash, and fell to the ground. In an instant, it was like a cycle had flashed by. Undoubtedly, this was a terrifying Dao technique that corroded vitality and branded the passage of time, and it was unbelievably formidable. This caused Lin Sun's heart to tremble, and his attacks grew stronger and stronger. No one had expected that this battle would be so dangerous and intense, and it seemed to be so locked in battle. Peerless attacks were being displayed at every single moment. Similarly, a shocking and unexpected event would occur at every critical moment. At this moment, the two of them had already exchanged over 1,000 moves, yet the outcome of the battle hadn't been decided yet, and it caused all the other experts in the surroundings to be dumbstruck. The main reason was that both of them had stepped foot onto the peerless path of cultivation, possessed peerless Dao techniques, possessed supreme combat strength, and similarly possessed divine treasures. Such a collision was like a needle going against an awl, and the outcome was difficult to determine. Damn it! This fellow really concealed his strength well. The two successors of the Pure Land of Immortality gritted their teeth in hatred. They couldn't accept that even the Hall of Immortality had failed to kill Lin Sun. The rumors are true. Demon God Lin possesses great fortune and possesses a divine treasure. Some of the experts' eyes flickered. At this moment, they had completely concluded that the pagoda floating above Lin Sun's head and fighting against the Hall of Immortality was definitely a divine treasure. Moreover, it was extremely extraordinary. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to fight against the Hall of Immortality. How could this be? Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan, and the others were extremely unwilling to accept this. The stronger Lin Sun was, the more they feared and resisted him, and they wished that he could be killed as soon as possible. During this process, they were also engaged in a chaotic battle, but none of them could get close to the first fortune. Otherwise, they would be besieged, and a situation of mutual restraint was formed. Therefore, half of their attention was placed on the battle between Lin Sun and Yu Lingkong. Boom! Just as everyone's thoughts were in turmoil, a great change occurred in the battle. P.S. Tomorrow's outbreak will be the same as last time. The first update will be at noon. Chapter 9:30. Boom! Yu Lingkong was injured once again. His left chest was hit by Lin Sun's fist. If he didn't wear a marvelous inner armor, his body would be penetrated by this blow. He coughed up blood and felt that something was wrong. However, compared to this, the humiliation and anger in his heart were even greater. Up until this point in the battle, he had actually been injured again, and this was something that he had never encountered before. Conversely, Lin Sun was even more composed and calm. Since he'd participated in the Dao Discussion Lantern Conference until now, he'd experienced many battles all along the way, and his strength had transformed repeatedly. For example, the comprehensive breakthrough in the Limit Realm, the breakthrough in the floating and sinking sea, the sublimation of his soul energy when he lit his soul lamp, the great Dao power of star obliteration and devouring vault when he comprehended the steel forest. Although the series of experiences and gains could be said to be astonishing, they were somewhat heterogeneous. There were many insights and experiences that he had yet to truly digest. On the other hand, This extremely arduous battle allowed him to obtain material tempering. He sorted out and comprehended everything he'd obtained, causing his combat strength to undergo a transformation as well. Until now, Lin Sun's chi was more and more blazing, and his mind was more and more clear. All kinds of insights emerged in his mind, which made him get the most comprehensive training in this extreme battle. He began to press forward continuously. He was incomparably disdainful, like a demonic god that could sweep through the universe. Yu Linkong's expression finally changed. He had a bad feeling. Even though the energy he'd utilized earlier was peerlessly formidable, it consumed an enormous amount of his cultivation as well, and he was on the verge of being unable to endure it any longer. Puff! In just a moment, his face turned pale. In the end, he couldn't hold it in. He coughed out a mouthful of blood, a sign that he was on the verge of collapse. In an instant, the other experts were horrified. Just how powerful was Yu Linkong from before? He was like a divine king that grasped supreme Dao techniques, and his resources were heaven-defying as well. He possessed many trump cards, but now he seemed to be unable to hold on. This was unimaginable and too unbelievable. They had never imagined that a peerless figure like Yu Linkong, who was almost invincible, would be in such a state. The expressions of the two successors of the Pure Lands of Longevity became even uglier to the extreme. Their hearts lost balance, unable to accept all of this. The sacred treasure, the Hall of Longevity, had already made its move. How could it be stopped? How was this possible? Boom! On the contrary, Lin Sun felt unprecedentedly powerful. All the aura around him was boiling like never before. His fist energy shook the heavens and the earth as it swept across the field. Damn it! Veins popped up on Yu Linkong's forehead, and his hair stood on end from anger. Since he started cultivating until now, he'd always risen in an invincible manner and had never suffered a single defeat. The blow he suffered today was undoubtedly a humiliation that was difficult to eliminate. He decided to stake it all on one throw. However, right at this moment, Lin Sun arrived from the sky. His fist covered the sky and smashed down. Yu Linkong tried his best to block the attack and barely managed to defuse it. His vital energy and blood were roiling, and his condition was getting worse. He realized that if he didn't counterattack, then it would be impossible for him to turn the situation around in this battle. But at this time, Lin Sun didn't intend to give him a chance to breathe. When the fist force was dissolved, the snow-white broken blade had already arrived. Silence slash. The heavens and the earth were silent, and all sound seemed to have vanished. Only a wisp of dreamlike saber light was left in the sky. Yu Linkong's hair stood on end. The sense of fatal danger made him retreat without hesitation. However, he was still one step too late. His chest was hit by the sharp edge of the broken blade. With a ripping sound, the inner armor he wore was torn apart like paper, and a bloody wound was left on his body. His skin and flesh were split open, and fresh blood gushed out like a fountain. His stomach was almost cut open. Yu Linkong couldn't help but scream in pain after suffering such a heavy injury. His body flew up into the sky, and a string of blood sprayed out of his mouth. It was a horrifying sight. One strike shocked the world. This strike was too swift and fierce. It was like a stroke of God. It came suddenly, and it heavily injured Yu Linkong, causing blood to spurt out. Everyone was stunned. No one expected that Lin Sun would be so swift and overbearing. He didn't give Yu Linkong any chance at all. His courage was shocking. The two successors of the Pure Land of Longevity screamed. The faces of Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan, and the others changed greatly, and their hearts twitched fiercely. Ji Xingyao and Luo Jiao were shocked, and their hearts were surging. Lin Sun's performance had completely exceeded their expectations. Ah! Yu Linkong roared. His body was glowing, and the injuries on his body were healing at an astonishing speed. Moreover, his aura was still strong. Just now, he was so close to being killed. How could he accept this? Boom. However, before he could get up, Lin Sun had rushed over again. Up to this point, Lin Sun had already known how terrible Yu Linkong was. He was very sure that once this guy was allowed to live, he was destined to be a big hidden danger in the future. Therefore, Lin Sun didn't hesitate at all. He decisively and directly wanted to kill Yu Linkong. But at this moment, a shout suddenly sounded in the distance. "Stop! Demon God Lin, look who this is!" The shout came from a successor of the Pure Land of Longevity, named Sun Quan. At this time, there was a young man standing in front of him, but he was firmly controlled by Sun Quan, who put a spiritual sword against the young man's throat. And that young man was Yu Jianming. All of a sudden, Lin Sun's pupils suddenly shrank, and his face became extremely cold and frightening. He didn't expect that Yu Jianming, who had already given up fighting for the fortune and stayed at the bottom of the green lamp tree, would be captured by his opponents and used as a hostage to threaten him. Obviously, they had planned this beforehand. At the same time, the other experts present here witnessed all of this, and their expressions changed. They didn't expect that the dignified successor of the blessed lands of longevity would actually do something like kidnapping a hostage, and such actions were slightly dishonorable. In particular, even if this could save Yu Linkong, it would inevitably become a stain on Yu Linkong's life if it was spread out. At that time, the world would think that Yu Linkong was no match for Lin Sun. In order to survive, Yu Linkong used the lives of others to threaten Lin Sun. At this moment, even Ji Xingyao and Loka couldn't help but frown. There was no doubt that Yu Jianming had been captured long ago, which showed that this was premeditated, which was frightening. Who could believe that the successor of the Pure Land of Longevity would do such a dirty thing? "Are you looking for death?" Lin Sun's eyes were as cold as the abyss, and the boiling killing intent in his heart was almost uncontrollable. His voice was full of killing intent. "Humph, if you want your friend to live, do as we say. If you dare to play any tricks, don't blame me for being rude." Sun Quan's face was grim. He firmly controlled Yu Jianming, and the sword edge was against Yu Jianming's throat. His skin was stabbed, and drops of dark red blood flowed out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, another successor of the Pure Land of Longevity had already rushed over, helped Yu Jianming up, and gathered with them. The scene was strangely silent for a while, which was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Everyone could see that Lin Sun was completely angry, like a volcano that would erupt at any time. The killing intent surging around him was overwhelming and terrifying to the extreme. "Let him go and I'll let you go. Otherwise, none of you will leave here alive." Finally, Lin Sun said indifferently. He used all his strength to suppress the killing intent and anger in his heart. Seeing this, Sun Quan and others secretly breathed a sigh of relief. They were not afraid that Lin Sun would go back on his words, but they were afraid that he didn't care about Yu Jianming's life. Undoubtedly, they were right. Even someone as powerful as Demon Lin could only endure and give in when facing the life and death of his friend. "We won't push you too far. If you want your friend to live, it's very simple. Hand over the pagoda in your hand." Sun Quan's eyes flickered, and he made a request. This time, even Ji Xingyao couldn't stand it anymore. Wasn't this pushing too far? It was really unimaginable that the successor of the Pure Land of Longevity should be so ugly. Yu Linkong was silent. He was trying his best to heal himself, so he didn't say a word. But he had already decided in his heart that after he survived this time, he would immediately kill Sun Quan, and then tell the world that this had nothing to do with him. In this way, his reputation and dignity would not be damaged. As for Sun Quan's death, he didn't care about it at all. "You want me to hand over the pagoda?" Lin Sun muttered to himself, and his face became colder and colder. He didn't expect such shameless words from a successor of the Pure Land of Longevity, which almost made him furious. "You didn't hear it wrong, so you don't need to doubt it." Sun Quan was complacent at this moment. He felt that he had seized Lin Sun's life, and he had nothing to fear. Senior brother son, aren't you going too far? I believe that if the elders of our sect saw this scene, they would never allow you to do this, Bai Lingshi couldn't help saying coldly. Her words made Sun Quan's face darken, and he scolded, Bai Lingshi, I have long known that you have an unusual relationship with that boy. Remember, you are the successor of the Pure Land of Longevity. Helping that boy is a betrayal of your sect and colluding with the enemy. That's an unforgivable crime. Bai Lingshi's clear eyes narrowed, and a sullen expression appeared on her beautiful face. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth, and her heart was cold. She never thought that she would be excluded and scolded like this. But before she could speak, Yu Jianming, who was under control, suddenly raised his head and looked at Lin Sun with shame, saying, Lin Sun, it's my fault. You've helped me many times along the way, but I've caused you trouble again and again. Speaking of this, he took a deep breath, and a touch of determination appeared on his face. He said, You regard me as a friend, so I won't let you be threatened by others. Suddenly, Lin Sun had a bad premonition, and his face changed abruptly. No. But it was too late. After Yu Jianming finished speaking, he took the initiative to meet the sword edge in front of his neck with deep apology and sadness on his face, as if he had been relieved. Puff! Blood burst out, hot and poignant, and dyed the void red. All the people present were silent. No one had expected that Yu Jianming would die so bravely at this moment, so resolute and so calm. And he did this just to prevent Lin Sun from being threatened. Speechless shock surged in everyone's heart. Bright red blood sprayed all over Sun Quan's body. He was dumbfounded, and his eyes were fixed on the spot with a look of disbelief. Beside him, Yu Lingkong and another successor of the Pure Land of Longevity were also stunned. They never thought that Yu Jianming would be so resolute and resolute. Chapter 931. At this moment, there was an unspeakable silence in Lin Sun's heart, which was oppressive and almost suffocating. Perhaps Yu Jianming couldn't compare with the top talents, let alone those peerless figures. But he was also a heaven's chosen. In Lin Sun's heart, he was not inferior to anyone. Even he could participate in this Tao Discussion Lantern Festival thanks to Yu Jianming's invitation. And along the way, Yu Jianming had been standing firmly by Lin Sun's side. Even if his strength was not as good as others, he could risk his life for Lin Sun. But now, he was dead, and the reason was so simple, just to avoid being threatened before he died. He didn't make a single request, and he didn't even say that he would take revenge for him. Lin Sun's chest seemed to be blocked by a stone and was about to explode. A kind of unspeakable hatred hit his heart like a raging sea. Ha, Lin Sun, you also saw that he committed suicide. It has nothing to do with me. I take back my suggestion just now. Just pretend that nothing happened. Sun Quan defended himself with a stiff face. Whoosh! Lin Sun raised his head. His black eyes were like a pair of surging abysses, extremely cold, which made Sun Quan's hair stand on end as if he had fallen into an ice cave. You all deserve to die. While speaking, Lin Sun, who had been suppressed for a long time, broke out completely. There was unspeakable hatred and sadness in his heart that needed to be vented. Boom! His whole body was bursting with clear light, and the horrible breath was overwhelming. At this moment, he was like a real devil, extremely cruel. Go! Yu Lingkong's face changed greatly. He was trying to recover as soon as possible, but Yu Jianming's sudden suicide changed everything. He knew very well that it was difficult for Lin Sun, who was in a rage, to confront him again. He had to retreat immediately. Whoosh! Yu Lingkong forced himself to support his strength, ran his Taoist law, and rushed down the Taoist altar. Want to leave? Impossible! Lin Sun was extremely hateful. The combination of Swanee seal and Basha prohibition pressed down like a mountain falling from the sky. With a bang, Yu Lingkong was shaken back, blood spurted from his mouth and nose, and his face changed greatly. Go to hell. Almost at the same time, the broken blade had swept across the sky and cut down angrily. With a puff, one of Sun Quan's companions was cut into two halves, and he died miserably. Everyone was shocked. The enraged fiend god Lin gave off a different aura. He was cold, bloodthirsty, decisive, and extremely terrifying. The descendant of the pure land of longevity was a top-notch heaven's pride, but he was killed like a piece of grass. You dare, Sun Quan screamed. He was so shocked that he almost went crazy. But Lin Sun kicked him, and all his teeth flew out. He fell to the ground hard. His vision darkened, and he almost fainted. He got up and was about to run away. He was extremely terrified. He had found that Lin Sun had gone to kill Yu Lingkong and had no time to deal with him for the time being. Puff, puff. However, just as he took a step forward, his legs were cut off by the broken blade that came from the air, and he fell from the waist down. Sun Quan let out a blood-curdling screech. Half of his body could no longer stand up. Blood gushed out like a waterfall, staining the ground red. Many experts were horrified. This was just too tragic, making their hearts tremble. He could have killed him in one strike, but clearly, Fiend Celestial Lin had no intention of doing so. He wanted to torture the fellow to death bit by bit. At the same time, the wordless pagoda above Lin Sun's head was killing Yu Lingkong. This fellow had obviously recovered some of his strength, and his combat power was still there. Even though he was seriously injured, he still looked extremely powerful. It was indeed difficult to kill him. If such a peerless figure was not killed, there were bound to be many accidents and twists and turns in the future. Lin Sun, you will die a horrible death. Do you know who I am? If my father and master find out, they will tear you into pieces, grind your bones, and scatter your ashes. Sun Quan was howling miserably, and his voice was extremely resentful. He was the descendant of the pure land of longevity, and he came from an ancient clan. Now, his legs were cut off and he was on the verge of death. This was unacceptable to him, and he almost went crazy. Puff, puff. However, before he finished speaking, the broken blade showed its power and cut off his shoulders. His arms fell, and he became a human stick. It was too tragic and bloody. Many experts felt their hearts turn cold. Fiend Celestial Lin, in his rage, was simply a butcher. At the same time, Yu Lingkong was also coughing up blood, and his face was extremely ugly. His greatest reliance, the Hall of Longevity, was restrained at the moment and could not exert its power. Moreover, he himself was seriously injured. In the battle with Lin Sun, he was completely suppressed without any suspense. This was difficult for Yu Lingkong, who had always been arrogant and conceited, to accept. However, the fatal threat made him not dare to think too much, and he had no time to think too much. He could only do his best to fight head-on and escape. Suddenly, he thought of a person, Ji Xingyao. But when Yu Lingkong looked up, he saw that Ji Xingyao was fighting with Shang Jia, Shi Yun, and others, whether intentionally or not. She was fighting for the first fortune with all her strength, and she seemed to have no time to care about anything else. Then, Yu Lingkong looked at Bai Lingshi again, and he saw that the latter had already rushed to Lin Sun at this moment. Yes, Bai Lingshi had attacked. This made Yu Lingkong feel gratified. He also knew that Bai Lingshi seemed to be a friend of Lin Sun. He had thought that Bai Lingshi would make things difficult for him, but at this critical moment she did not hesitate to come forward, which made Yu Lingkong feel a little hopeful. But in the blink of an eye, Yu Lingkong's mind went blank. Because Bai Lingshi came fast, she was defeated even faster. In the blink of an eye, she was punched out by Lin Sun, coughed up blood, and fell to the ground in embarrassment. How could this be? Yu Lingkong was furious. Although he knew that Bai Lingshi could not be a match for Lin Sun, he was like a drowning man grasping at a life-saving straw at this moment. It was inevitable that he would try his luck. But obviously, Bai Lingshi could not. At the same time, Bai Lingshi was transmitting her voice to Lin Sun. Well, Now you can kill him as much as you want. In this way, even if I return to the sect, I will not be punished." Obviously, this was a feint that had been prepared for a long time. It was just a show for Yu Linkong. Boom. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun broke out without hesitation. "Do you really think that you can kill me like this? How could Yu Linkong be willing to be killed just like that?" He used all his strength and let out a roar. As if he was staking it all in one throw, a terrifying aura emanated from his body. In an instant, the area was filled with purple light and exploded with boundless light. Even the longevity hall was buzzing and producing powerful fluctuations. However, in the face of all this, Lin Sun's momentum did not decrease. He used the wordless pagoda to destroy the suppression of the longevity hall, and his fist pierced through the void. Bang! Yu Linkong's head exploded. When they witnessed this scene, the entire place fell into a dead silence. Everyone felt a chill run down their spine, and their hearts trembled. It was too terrifying and shocking. A young man from the lower world had killed Yu Linkong, the leader of the Pure Land of Longevity's younger generation, who was known to be invincible among his peers. That punch could not be described as overbearing. It caused Yu Linkong's head to explode and blood gushed out. Everyone was stunned. They still found it hard to believe that Yu Linkong had been killed just like that? This shocked them to the extreme. Yu Linkong was a peerless talent who was famous throughout the southern mysterious world, and was born in a family of sages. He was apprenticed to the Pure Land of Longevity. He had a foundation that surpassed his peers and a treasure. No matter how one looked at him, he was almost perfect and no flaws could be found. But now he had been killed. This was a monstrous event that was destined to turn into a great uproar and spread all over the world. The clans and sects behind Yu Linkong were bound to be furious and cause great turmoil. And demon god Lin Sun, after this battle, would become even more famous, and his prestige would be pushed to an unprecedented height. Because he proved with iron-like brilliance that he had the potential to kill his peers even on the path of cultivation. Lin Sun stood where he was, but the anger in his chest did not subside. Yu Jiaming's death made him feel no joy in killing Yu Linkong. He turned around and looked at Sun Quan, who was cut into a human stick in the distance, and asked coldly, "Who came up with the idea to kidnap Yu Jiaming?" Sun Quan looked resentful and shouted, "Don't even think about it." Puff! Lin Sun killed him without any hesitation. There was silence in the field. Everyone was shocked. Except for Bai Lingshi, all the successors of the Pure Land of Immortality who arrived at the Taoist altar were annihilated. Before this, no one could have predicted this. The melee was still breaking out. Those peerless figures were fighting for the first fortune. But they already knew that no one could get what they wanted under the situation where they were restraining each other. And now, there was another demon god Lin who had the power to kill Yu Linkong, which made the situation on the top of the Taoist altar more delicate. Lin Sun did not care about this. He turned around and carefully put away Yu Jiaming's body. "I promise that this kind of thing will not happen again. Rest in peace. I will bring your body back to your homeland and bury it," Lin Sun murmured in his heart. Suddenly, Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat and he had a bad feeling. He suddenly saw that the immortal temple suddenly emitted a horrible aura of the divine Tao, as if it had woken up from silence. Boom! Dazzling divine Tao laws swept out from the Saint Treasure like a waterfall, aiming to kill Lin Sun. Not to mention Lin Sun, even the others did not expect such an unforeseen event to happen. When Lin Sun was the most relaxed, a calamity suddenly befell him. Previously, the immortal temple had always been resisted by the wordless pagoda and did not erupt with its true power. Almost everyone had forgotten how terrifying this Saint Treasure was. Whoosh! The void exploded and was erased by the terrifying divine Tao laws. It was terrifying to the extreme. Lin Sun was caught off guard. Even though he used the wordless pagoda to block it, he was still sent flying. Puff! He coughed up blood and his body suffered unimaginable injuries in that instant. He looked like he would collapse at any time. The immortal temple was a divine Tao supreme treasure. It possessed an unimaginable legend and was world-shaking. How could an ordinary treasure compare to it? If it was not for the wordless pagoda suppression, there was no doubt that Lin Sun was destined to meet a disaster long ago. He had been too careless. Lin Sun did not expect such a thing to happen. Before Lin Sun could react, the immortal temple attacked again. Its divine power was like the sea and it was enough to fill the sky. Chapter 932. The Longevity Palace was a simple and unadorned bronze color. It was grand and solemn, and there was a type of supreme divine Tao aura circulating within it. It was extremely terrifying. It was as if it had just woken up from its slumber. The power it was unleashing was even stronger than when it was in Yu Lingkong's hands. Just by looking at it from afar, one would feel despair and be unable to muster any thoughts of resisting. In reality, Lin Sun was indeed unable to move at this moment. Firstly, he had suffered severe injuries from the previous attack. Secondly, the immortal palace was simply too terrifying. Just the aura it emitted had imprisoned Lin Sun there, oppressing his divine soul to the point where it almost collapsed. It should be noted that Lin Sun now possessed the spiritual power at the level of gathering of divine flowers. Yet, they were all intimidated and suppressed, powerless to resist. From this, one could imagine just how immeasurable the might of the Hall of Immortality was. This was the true might of a saint treasure. It was also the first time for Lin Sun to face the threat of such a treasure, which made him deeply understand what was helpless and powerless. The only thing Lin Sun could do at the moment was to operate the wordless pagoda with all his might, hoping that it could help him solve the current predicament. However, Lin Sun also knew that his chances were very slim. Due to his carelessness, the Hall of Immortals had seized the initiative and put him in an extremely passive situation. Right at this critical moment, an indifferent voice suddenly resounded through the heavens and the earth. "You are not allowed to be disturbed in the land of the creation inheritance. Step down." At the same time that voice resounded, the bronze bell on the table at the center of the Tao platform suddenly emitted a grand ring. Dang! Like the sound of the beginning of chaos, heaven and earth shook. A boundlessly terrifying and supreme power swept out and charged toward the immortal palace. The figures of all the experts present here stiffened as if they'd been struck by lightning. Their souls were dazed while they staggered, and they seemed as if they were drunk and on the verge of collapse. On the other hand, the Longevity Palace suddenly trembled. Bang! It erupted with boundless light of the Tao, and the energy of Saint Tao laws surged into appearance like a waterfall. It surged and was terrifying to the extreme. However, the sound of the bell seemed to be able to destroy everything. It spread out and firmly suppressed the might of the immortal palace. This was unbelievable. Who could have imagined that the copper bell that they regarded as the number one creation would actually display its divine might at this moment, suppressing and expelling the Immortals' Hall? This was a true battle between saint treasures. Crash, obscure Tao patterns appeared around the Immortal Hall. There were ancient people offering sacrifices, the vicissitudes of time, and shocking scenes of gods and devils slaughtering each other. Its imposing aura grew even more terrifying. It was like a saint as it emanated a myriad of Saint Tao laws, and it resisted the sound of the bell that swept over like a ripple. Everyone felt their scalps go numb, and they felt like their guts were about to split apart. The power released by this battle was too noble and powerful, and it exceeded the scope of their understanding. It was like a true holy war. The sound of the bell represents all living beings, and the Saint Tao originates from all living beings. Going against it is disgraceful. That indifferent voice resounded once more in the heavens and the earth. Boom! The sound of the bell was boundless, and it carried a great might. It was as if the energy of all living things was converged, causing the world to dim down. The Immortality Temple surged with cryptic Tao patterns, and a divine aura surged. But in the end, it seemed to know that there was no solution to this battle, so it gave up. Light flowed around its body, and a dazzling divine waterfall sprayed out. It collected the remains and flesh left behind by Yu Linkong, and then it tore open the void and left. From the beginning to the end, he couldn't be stopped. At the same time, the boundless sound of the bell fell silent. If it wasn't for the fact that Yu Linkong's corpse had vanished, everyone would suspect that everything that occurred earlier was a dream because it seemed to be too unreal. A battle between holy treasures? It was the first time they'd witnessed such an extraordinary might. It was absolutely boundlessly terrifying, and it caused them to feel exceptionally tiny and helpless. Lin soon escaped death, and he was shocked to the point he broke out in cold sweat. Only now did he realize the meaning of the words holy treasures are connected to their souls. When a treasure possessed the energy of the Saint Tao, it had become completely different. It seemed as if it possessed a spirit, and its might was unfathomable. It was even to the extent that Lin Sun wondered if Yu Linkong had really died. On the table, the 15 centimeters tall bronze bell was silent, and it flowed with a green halo. Moreover, the indifferent voice in the heavens and the earth was silent as well, and it didn't appear again. All of this occurred in an instant, and it was too fast. When everyone recovered from their shock, only Lin Sun, who'd suffered a heavy injury, remained on the battlefield. Right at this moment, those experts who'd been watching all of this since a long time ago reacted, and some of them made a move and pounced at Lin Sun. All of you! Bai Lingshi was shocked and furious, and she charged forward without the slightest hesitation to protect Lin Sun. Mu Jianting, Li Qinghuan, Shang Jia, and the others made a move, and they intended to seize this opportunity to kill Lin Sun and eliminate this terrifying opponent. Because they'd all noticed that Lin Sun was extremely weak at this moment, and he'd suffered a heavy injury. He'd been injured by the longevity hall, so it was bound to be real. This had undoubtedly become the best opportunity to kill Lin Sun. Swoosh! Mu Jianting was practically the first to arrive. He'd borne a grudge against Lin Sun since a long time ago, so he wouldn't hold back after seizing this opportunity, and he slashed down with his sword. Despicable! Bai Lingshi was furious, and her beautiful and clear face was filled with rage. She'd been paying close attention to the situation, so she naturally couldn't tolerate Lin Sun being killed by others. Swoosh! Her figure fluttered, and an illusory glow appeared around her. She drew out her Taoist sword and attacked with all her strength. Rumbling resounded here, and sword intent swept about. Bai Lingshi and Mu Jianting fought, and a dazzling light erupted. The silence at the peak of the Taoist platform was broken at this moment. Swish! A golden spear swept over. It was exceptionally sharp, and its murderous aura soared into the sky. It pierced through the void and went straight for Lin Sun's heart. Shang Jia had made his move. As early as when they were climbing the Taoist platform, he'd launched a sneak attack on Lin Sun to avenge Qing Lian and use Lin Sun's life as a betrothal gift to the Cyan Phoenix clan to propose marriage. And now, he'd seized the opportunity to attack with unparalleled ruthlessness. Lin Sun had no choice but to dodge. His injuries couldn't be concealed at all, and they weren't just ordinarily serious. The power of the Longevity Hall's divine path was too terrifying. If not for the wordless pagoda, he would have been killed on the spot. Swish! On the other side, Li Qinghuan also attacked from a tricky angle. She launched a sudden attack with a dazzling blade of light, and it flew over at lightning speed. Among these people, some wanted Lin Sun's life, and some wanted to snatch the pagoda from Lin Sun's hands. Although their goals were different, they attacked at the same time. In fact, it wasn't just these people. Some other strong cultivators also did the same. The wordless pagoda was undoubtedly a saint treasure since it could stand against the Longevity Hall. In the face of such a rare opportunity, who could endure? If Lin Sun recovered, it would be too difficult to deal with him. Even Yu Linkong had been killed by him, so who could stop him? Bai Lingshi's combat strength was extraordinary, and she could be said to be outstanding. However, in the face of a group of peerless figures, she suddenly paled in comparison and was on the verge of danger. As for Ji Xingyao, Luo Jia, and the others, they didn't participate. They were fighting for the first creation on the table, and the group of heroes going to kill Lin Sun indirectly provided them with an excellent opportunity. In short, the situation in the field was changing rapidly, and Lin Sun had become the target of public criticism. His situation was even more dangerous than before. If not for the protection of the wordless pagoda, it would have been difficult for him to hold on. Puff! Not long after, Bai Lingshi also coughed up blood. She was injured. Lin Sun's dark eyes were cold as he stared at these people. He was really angry to the extreme. These guys still wanted to take advantage of the situation and take his life. This was intolerable to Lin Sun. However, Lin Sun had to accept the reality that his injuries were too serious. If this went on, even if he wasn't killed, he would be exhausted to death. When a tiger falls to the plains, he will be bullied by a dog. Lin Sun sighed in his heart, but he didn't give up. He thought of the psychic white ginseng. Knowing that Lin Sun wanted to use some of his medicine to heal his injuries, the old hooligan immediately jumped up and refused unceremoniously. "Impossible! Don't even think about it. I've spent countless years to open a thread of wisdom. How can I let a little bastard like you take advantage of me?" Lin Sun wasn't in the mood to joke at all. At this time, even precious elixirs couldn't heal his injuries. Unfortunately, the golden marrow jade liquid, obtained from the one-horned golden-eyed beast king's lair, had long been used up when he advanced to the reincarnation developing realm. Otherwise, there was no need for him to wrangle with this old hooligan. The reason why he negotiated with the old hooligan was that he didn't want to destroy this old medicine. "If I can't live, don't even think about living." Lin Sun immediately decided to eat this old guy whole. "What are you doing?" the old hooligan shouted in shock. Okay. Don't do it. I promise you, okay?" As he spoke, he looked pained and his old face was twisted into a ball. In the end, he plucked out a strand of his root and a verdant leaf, and threw them out while cursing. "If I can't protect my foundation to become a medicine sage in the future, you little bastard will have to bear the main responsibility. Lin Sun, are you injured?" But at the same time, a clear and ethereal voice sounded in the wordless pagoda. Lin Sun's heart suddenly trembled. A huge, strange jade stone that was carefully placed on the first floor of the pagoda started to buzz at this moment, and then it exploded with a cracking sound. A delicate and beautiful figure stood up from within. She was like a dream, and her whole body was surging with a black mist of light like the eternal night. She wore a large black cloak, and the brim of the hat covered half of her face, revealing only her slightly pale lips and a fair and translucent chin. Even so, she still gave off a soul-stirring beauty. Her cherry lips were lightly pursed, the bridge of her nose was high, and her skin was white and flawless like the fat of sheep. Her skin was covered by the black brim of her hat, mysterious and breathtaking, causing everything else to seem dim. Xia Ji. She had finally awakened from the nirvana, but compared to the past, she had obviously grown a lot taller. Her figure was tall and straight, and the black cloak could no longer cover her ankles, revealing a pair of delicate feet that seemed like they were carved from white jade, glowing with a translucent luster. If Xia Ji was said to be a pure and extremely perfect little girl in the past, then at this moment she had already grown into a slender and elegant young lady, and had transformed into a beautiful and charming young lady. "It seems that every time I see you, you are in a sorry state. Did someone bully you again?" The clear voice was filled with an ethereal and tranquil charm, like the tinkling sound of nature. As she spoke, Xia Ji casually flipped over the brim of the hat, and a purple spear and a black umbrella appeared in her hands. "I'll help you." Just like when they were in Feiyun village, she had said the same thing. Her pair of clear eyes that were like black gems were full of seriousness. But her tone was so matter-of-fact, exactly the same as that year, and there had never been any change. Chapter 933. The old hooligan was dumbfounded. Xia Ji had taken off the brim of her hat, revealing her covered face. Her facial features were like the masterpiece of God, possessing a kind of extreme beauty. Her eyebrows were as black as ink, her eyes were clear, her skin was as white as mutton fat, and her body was slender and graceful. She was like a green lotus in the misty rain, with a kind of beauty that overshadowed everything in the world. She was as beautiful as a painting. The old hooligan was stunned. In his opinion, this girl's beauty could be said to be against the natural order, and could definitely bring disaster to a country and people. "Oh my God, is this a fairy from the immortal world?" the old hooligan murmured involuntarily. Xia Ji glanced at him, with a kind of extreme indifference in her clear crescent eyes. The old hooligan's whole body stiffened, with a feeling of being awed and palpitating. When he came to his senses again, Xia Ji was long gone. This girl, why doesn't she look like a person of this world? The old hooligan frowned, as if he had encountered a great problem. On the Taoist altar, a fierce and dangerous battle broke out. Bai Lingshi had coughed up blood many times, and her white clothes were stained with blood, but she still persisted. However, in the end, he was still too weak, unable to stop everyone. "Lin Sun, I only want to take your head. You must fulfill my wish." Shang Jia's whole body was golden, and his spear swept through the air with fierce, killing intent. Boom! Bai Lingshi rushed over and blocked the attack, but then she was attacked by several enemies. She immediately coughed up a mouthful of blood, and her face was so pale that it was almost transparent. "Hurry up and leave. You don't want to live." Lin Sun had just withdrawn his divine sense from the wordless pagoda when he saw this scene. He was so angry that his eyes were almost bloodshot. He tried his best to activate the wordless pagoda, but it was still not effective. His injuries were so serious that he couldn't continue. "You and I have known each other for a long time. I can't just watch you die," Bai Lingshi said. Her voice was a little weak, but it was unusually firm. "Humph! Why are you still so stupid to help this guy at this time? Let me tell you, he will die for sure." Mu Jianting charged at Lin Sun with a sword in his hand. His expression was grim and cold. He hated Lin Sun to the core. Seeing Lin Sun about to die, he had an indescribable pleasure in his heart. At the critical moment, Lin Sun activated Pu Lao's roar. The golden ripples spread and barely blocked Mu Jianting's attack, but he was so shocked that he coughed up blood, his body shook, and he almost fell down. "Can't hold on any longer?" Li Qinghuan attacked from the side. He was very cautious and careful. If his attack didn't hit, he would dodge and retreat. However, as long as he attacked, it would definitely be extremely vicious and fierce. "He's mine!" Shang Jia shouted out explosively. His entire body surged with golden light, and the halberd blotted out the sky as it attacked with extreme ferocity. "Die!" On the other side, Mu Jianting had charged over a long time ago. In an instant, Lin Sun was completely surrounded in all directions. There was no place to hide or hide. Bai Lingshi was also entangled. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break out of the encirclement. This made her extremely anxious, and it was the first time she felt so powerless. Lin Sun couldn't move, so he could barely use the broken blade to block part of the attack. However, the impact caused his injury to become more and more serious. Blood gurgled out of his body, which was a ghastly sight. "Get lost!" Bai Lingshi fought desperately, dashing left and right, but she still couldn't get out of the encirclement. On the contrary, she was injured repeatedly because she was anxious to break out of the encirclement. Swish! Mu Jianting's pine-patterned Taoist sword slashed down and stabbed at Lin Sun's back. "I'll send you to hell." A cold smile appeared on Li Qinghuan's lip. He was sure that Lin Sun was doomed to die on the spot. On the other side, Shang Jia and others also attacked, which put Lin Sun in a desperate situation. However, Lin Sun's expression was terrifyingly calm. In his palm was a small mutton-fat jade bottle. This was the immeasurable Wei bottle, and it had long been filled with the power of the royal forbidden formation. He had always been worried that these peerless figures had terrible trump cards, so he hadn't used this treasure for a long time. But now it was a moment of life and death, so he couldn't care about anything else. Why do I have to be brave? Are you worried that I'm no match for them? I'm not what I used to be. Go and have a rest. At this moment, accompanied by a clear and sweet voice, a black umbrella suddenly opened, as if isolating the whole world and covering Lin Sun in it. Then, Xia Ji appeared in the middle of the field. The purple spear in her hand struck out in all directions effortlessly. Bang! Bang! A string of deafening collisions resounded, and all the attacks that came from the surroundings were destroyed and dispersed into a rain of light that dispersed into the surroundings. Mu Jianting and Li Qinghuan, who rushed to Lin Sun, trembled at the same time as if they were struck by lightning. They staggered backward under the terrible impact. This sudden change happened extremely quickly, so quickly that it ended in an instant. In the field, Lin Sun's figure was covered by a black umbrella. The umbrella was like a cover, covering the sky and the earth like the eternal night covering the universe. In front of him, the girl was dressed in a black cloak. The hood covered her face, revealing only a section of her fair and delicate chin. Her skin was as lustrous as suet, contrasting with the black cloak, giving off a breathtaking feeling. She was graceful, barefoot, and carried a purple spear. She was obviously alone, but when she stood there, she had a peerless bearing that could stop the storms in all directions. Who was she? The faces of Mu Jianting and the others became gloomy. Just now they were almost able to kill Lin Sun, but it was destroyed, and they were furious. Even the powerhouses who besieged by Lingshi were slightly surprised at this moment. They couldn't imagine why such a unique and mysterious young girl would appear at this moment. Get out of the way! Mu Jianting was the most unwilling and infuriated. The best opportunity to kill demon god Lin was destroyed just like this, and it almost made him go mad with anger. Bang! He attacked without hesitation. The pine-veined Taoist sword emitted a majestic and boundless sword intent. It was mysterious and had earth-shattering might. In the face of this attack, Xia Ji suddenly raised her head. A pair of beautiful and clear crescent eyes were revealed under the brim of her hat, but her eyes were indifferent and emotionless. Mu Jianting felt his entire body stiffen when his gaze swept past him. It was as if a sharp blade was held at his throat, and the rage and unwillingness in his heart were completely replaced by a wisp of terror. What sort of gaze is this? It's mysterious and deep like the eternal night, yet it's like a gaze that came from the abyss of hell, and it seems capable of restraining one's soul within it and causing one to fall completely into it. Instantly, Mu Jianting sensed extreme danger, causing his face to go pale, and he retreated explosively without hesitation. But he was obviously a step too late. Pooh! Everyone felt something flash before their eyes before the young girl's figure vanished into thin air, and when she appeared once more, she'd already arrived before Mu Jianting. But the mysterious violet spear in her hand had suddenly pierced through Mu Jianting's chest where his heart was, and it carried his body up while fresh blood poured down like a waterfall. Instantly, the surroundings went deathly silent while Li Qinghuan and the others broke out in cold sweat. In that instant earlier, they didn't even see clearly when Mu Jianting was easily penetrated by the violet spear in the young girl's hand. That speed was too fast, to the point where even a fleeting glance was nothing more than that. It was so fast that no one could react in time, and the scene was horrifying. A young girl who appeared abruptly killed a peerless figure from Yushu Temple in an incredible way. It was unbelievable, so they felt an indescribable shock and alarm. In the distance, Lin Sun was completely relaxed. He squatted down on the ground, swallowed a wisp of root and leaf of white ginseng into his mouth, and refine them with all his strength. But witnessing Xie Zhi's battle still made Lin Sun shocked and unable to calm down. He knew clearly that Xie Zhi inherited the mantle of Queen of Dark Night and cultivated a rare and mysterious cultivation method called Nirvana Scripture. Every transformation was like reincarnation after Nirvana. All the strength she had cultivated before would be transformed into a kind of potential, which made her body, root bone, and talent undergo a brand new transformation. This was only the third Nirvana of Xie Zhi, but Lin Sun didn't expect that Xie Zhi's combat power had already reached such a level. She simply seized all the good fortune and really went against the natural order. It seems that I really underestimated her before. This girl is still the same as before. Her fighting style is simple and direct, but it has fatal power. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. He didn't think much about it. He sent a sound transmission to Xie Zhi, asking her to help Bai Lingshi out of danger. Xie Zhi's reaction at the moment was a little strange. She glanced at Bai Lingshi with her clear eyes, and her dark eyebrows wrinkled imperceptibly. Clatter, Mu Jianting's body was lifted up, still dripping blood. The blood poured down and fell to the ground, making a frightening sound of splashing. Xie Zhi shook the purple spear, and threw Mu Jianting's body away like throwing garbage. Without looking at it, she said to Lin Sun, "I'll save her after I kill all these guys." Lin Sun was stunned. Before he came back to his senses, Xie Zhi had already attacked. Clang! The purple spear was 3 meters long. Its blade was restrained, simple and unsophisticated, with a sense of heaviness that had been precipitated over the years. In an instant, Xie Zhi's momentum changed. She seemed to be bathed in the eternal night. Where she walked, there was no light, and everything turned into darkness. Her breath was cold and indifferent. With her black cloak swaying, she was like a god coming from the darkness, full of palpitating power. "Let's do it together." Almost at the same time, Li Qinghuan and others all felt the danger. Their faces changed slightly, and they chose to join hands without hesitation. The girl's breath was too mysterious and terrible. Although it was extremely restrained, it made them more afraid. Compared with facing Lin Sun, her breath was more frightening and uneasy. However, this kind of cooperation was doomed to be in vain. Next, Xie Zhi told Lin how powerless and feeble his underestimation of Xie Zhi's strength was with practical actions. Puff! Like a dark shadow, Xie Zhi's figure was ethereal and direct. In a flash, she had already come to Li Qinghuan, and the purple spear swept out, piercing Li Qinghuan's throat simply and directly. In the process, Li Qinghuan used his secret treasures, displayed the supreme Taoist method, and ran his combat power to the extreme to resist. But everything was like a piece of paper, which was pierced through by the purple spear with irresistible force. Li Qinghuan was so shocked that his scalp was numb, and he almost exploded. Who on earth was this girl? How could she have such terrible power? He didn't dare to hesitate any more and turned around to escape. Puff! However, he couldn't escape in the end. The purple spear pierced straight into his back, bringing out a string of scarlet and hot heart blood. "You!" Li Qinghuan's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that he would be defeated in such a mess until he died. Chapter 934. Bang! Li Qinghuan's body was thrown to the ground, and his face was still full of shock and confusion. He didn't expect that he would be in such a sorry state. He didn't expect that he would follow in Mu Jianting's footsteps and be killed by a mysterious girl who appeared out of nowhere with a single strike. All of this was too shocking, and Shang Jia and the others who were about to besiege Lin soon felt their souls leave their bodies. Both Mu Jianting and Li Qinghuan were peerless figures of the younger generation in Shiheng world. They were talented and had outstanding combat strength. Moreover, they came from ancient orthodoxies and possessed life-saving trump cards. But now, they didn't even have the time to use their territories before they were killed with a single strike. Such a simple and clean killing method was undoubtedly too shocking. Who was she? Was she a king realm existence? but her aura was clearly only at the reincarnation developing realm, and it was extremely unique, as if she was in the darkness and didn't belong to this world. Indescribable panic surged in Shang Jia and the others' hearts. The first fortune was right in front of them, but when they realized that their lives were seriously threatened, they couldn't care less. Run! Without any discussion, they fled in all directions and rushed down the Taoist platform. Whoosh! However, the girl was faster than them. She suddenly appeared in front of the exit of the path leading to the Taoist platform and blocked it with the purple spear. She was surrounded by the eternal night luster, as if darkness had covered the place, and Shang Jia and the others' expressions changed. At this moment, even the powerhouses who were besieging Bai Lingshi in the distance were surprised. They decisively gave up on Bai Lingshi and chose to be vigilant. The girl was too mysterious and terrifying, and they realized the seriousness of the problem. Bai Lingshi took advantage of this opportunity to escape and came to Lin Sun. She was covered in injuries and her pretty face was pale and translucent, but she was also shocked. She couldn't imagine where Lin Sun found this girl and how she could be so powerful. "You're blocking there. Aren't you worried that we'll kill Lin Sun?" a powerhouse said with a gloomy expression and flickering eyes. Xia Ji's reaction was very simple. She threw the purple spear in her hand. Woo woo woo, the void exploded and turned into turbulence. No one knew what kind of treasure the purple spear was, but it was extremely terrifying and had the power to destroy everything. Puff! The threatening expert didn't even have time to dodge. His body was pierced through and he fell to the ground. A peerless character had died. For the other Xiozha of the present world, peerless people like Shang Jia were like peaks that were hard to climb and could not be shaken. But in the hands of Xia Ji, they were like clay chickens and pottery dogs, unable to withstand a single blow. He'd taken away a strand of the soul with a single strike, and from the beginning until the end, he hadn't spoken a single word. His indifferent and solitary attitude was undoubtedly too terrifying in the eyes of everyone. A chill ran down their spines, and their hearts were stretched taut to the extreme. They felt a serious threat, even though they each held powerful trump cards in their hands. However, at this moment they had lost confidence. They weren't sure if they could resolve the danger. Whoosh! However, just when they were hesitating whether they should risk their lives or not, Xia Ji moved first. She seemed to have lost her patience and wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. She grasped the violet spear in her hand, and her figure was indistinct as she walked on the battlefield. Some were overjoyed, thinking that they had found a way to escape. But before he could reach the exit, he was killed on the spot, his blood staining the ground. During this process, this powerhouse had tried to resist and also used his trump card, but everything seemed futile and useless. The young girl seemed to be impervious to all technique. She was in the eternal night of darkness. Every time the violet spear struck, it would be an attack that determined life and death. It had a shocking lethality. Shang Jia and the others naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They all threw caution to the wind and used their trump cards. For a moment, this area was dazzling with divine light, and all kinds of ancient treasures danced in the air. The scene was terrifying. Buzz! The young girl raised her hand and waved. The black umbrella soared into the sky and emitted the light of the eternal night of darkness. It destroyed all techniques and blocked the attacks of all ancient treasures. It was extremely miraculous. Pooh! During this process, she continued to charge and kill. Every blink of an eye, she would definitely kill an opponent. Blood bloomed continuously like fireworks, and it was poignant and despairingly beautiful. How was this a battle? It was clearly a one-sided massacre. If news of this spread to the outside world, it would surely cause an unprecedented storm that would shock the whole world. Lin Sun gasped in disbelief. Xia Ji's strength had obviously exceeded the scope of the reincarnation developing realm, but the aura she showed was still at the level of the reincarnation developing realm. Moreover, Lin Sun was sure that even he couldn't compete with the combat strength Xia Ji possessed. What level of strength is this? Lin Sun was puzzled. The only thing he could conclude was that Xia Ji hadn't set foot on the peak, but the power she grasped was too strong, which made the power she exerted seem so powerful. On the other side, Bai Lingshi was also moved. She couldn't calm down. Since she started cultivating, she had never encountered such a bizarre and shocking thing. A young girl treated a group of peerless figures as if they were nothing and killed them like chickens and monkeys. The bloody scenes were like layers upon layers of nightmares, so unreal. Ji Xingyao, Loka, Shiyun, and the others who were fighting for the first fortune had stopped. They had thought that they had seized the perfect opportunity to seize the bronze bell on the table, but they hadn't expected that it would still be a chaotic situation where no one could gain the upper hand. Moreover, all of them were more or less injured in the intense battle. When they noticed Xia Ji's sudden appearance and her absolute strength, they were shocked as well, and waves surged in their hearts. When Lin Sun killed Yu Lingkong earlier, he had already revealed shocking might. Now, the mysterious young girl that had suddenly appeared seemed to be even more terrifying. From the beginning until the end, no one could stop her slaughter. Out of an instinctive fear and vigilance, they stopped at the same time, and they had no choice but to face the sudden change in the situation cautiously. Blood was splashing and screams were reverberating. The Taoist platform seemed to have transformed into a bloody purgatory. Xia Ji wore a black cloak, and her figure was ethereal. She held an ancient purple spear in her hand. She seemed to be walking slowly, but she was actually moving extremely fast as if she was teleporting. The most incredible thing was that her bare feet were still clean and white, without a trace of blood or dust. Her whole body was covered with the light of the eternal night. The bloody ground and her white feet were like a graceful figure cut out of the eternal night. Together, they interweaved a strange and shocking picture. In the picture, Xia Ji was like a king walking in the darkness. She was alone, but she dominated the darkness of the eternal night. Puff! The last strong man was killed, and his body fell into a pool of blood. At this point, everyone seemed to wake up from a dream. When they saw the corpses all over the ground, the scarlet pool of blood, and the girl standing alone, an unprecedented chill surged in everyone's heart. What kind of girl was she? No one knew. Including Lin Sun, he had never really understood the origin of Xia Ji. It turns out that she wants to seize this treasure. Suddenly, Xia Ji looked at the bronze bell on the table in the distance. All of a sudden, Ji Xingyao, Lorger, and the others became alert and were ready to fight. Perhaps Xia Ji had unimaginably powerful strength, but they also had a trump card that could contend with her. But no one would use it easily unless it was a critical moment. Lin Sun also narrowed his eyes. If Xia Ji fought with Ji Xingyao, he would also feel a little uneasy. Whether it was Ji Xingyao or Lorger, they both had a foundation not weaker than Yu Lingkong, and it was very likely that they had a holy treasure. In a battle against it, it was impossible to rely solely on a contest of strength. For example, although Lin Sun succeeded in killing Yu Lingkong, he was still seriously injured by the Hall of Eternal Life, which put him in a precarious situation. Therefore, Lin Sun didn't want the same thing to happen to Xia Ji. However, to everyone's surprise, at this moment, the long silent indifferent voice sounded on its own initiative. You have no fate with the fortune. Retreat. All of a sudden, Xia Ji frowned, and her clear eyes surged with frightening power. Ji Xingyao, Lorger, and the others were stunned at first, and then they all felt relieved and happy. This undoubtedly proved that the girl had lost the qualification to compete for the first fortune. None of them were willing to fight Xia Ji. The scenes that occurred earlier allowed them to realize how formidable Xia Ji was, and unless they had no other choice, none of them wanted to fight a life-and-death battle with such an opponent. Let's go. At this time, Lin Sun took Bai Lingshi's hand and hurried to the exit of the Taoist altar. Xia Ji was stunned. You don't want it anymore? It's more important to stay alive, said Lin Sun, grabbing Xia Ji's arm and walking down the Taoist altar. Xia Ji couldn't help looking back and glancing at the bronze bell on the table. Finally, she restrained herself and left with Lin Sun. She had been like this in the past. As long as Lin Sun was there, she never cared about anything else. Just as she once said, her world was too small for Lin Sun alone. Lin Sun's abrupt departure also surprised Ji Xingyao, Lorger, and the others. After going through killing and danger, they had managed to hold on until now. How could they just give up like this? If they had done so earlier, why would they fight with Yu Lingkong? Why would they be seriously injured by the Hall of Eternal Life and almost fall into a desperate situation? Would they be willing to pay such a high price to give up like this? Of course, Lin Sun was unwilling. But he knew that Xia Ji had lost the qualification to compete for the first fortune, and he had not recovered from his serious injuries. Bai Lingshi was also heavily injured because of saving him. If they went to compete with Ji Xingyao and the others for the fortune, it was bound to be hopeless. Therefore, Lin Sun gave up decisively. Of course, there was an even more important reason, and it was that too many peerless figures had perished today, and the great figures standing behind them were waiting in the outside world. So, once this fortune came to an end and they left Dark Parasol Mountain, they would definitely encounter unexpected revenge and attacks. Therefore, they had to leave in advance. Otherwise, it would be too late if they left after the end of the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. Although the first fortune was extremely tempting, they had to be alive to fight for it. Lin Sun didn't want to lose his life here. Chapter 935. Some powerhouses stood at the bottom of the Tao platform. They had previously given up on fighting for the fortune and stayed at the bottom of the ancient path green lamp tree. However, after witnessing the divine phenomenon on the Tao platform, they could not help but come again. Unfortunately, the restrictions on the Tao platform were obscure and too terrifying, so they were unable to approach it and could only watch from the sidelines. Even Yu Lingkong has been killed. Is there anyone in the younger generation who can stop Demon God Lin? The Immortal Hall is too terrifying. It's worthy of being the holy treasure of the pure land of immortality. That attack almost killed Demon God Lin. Who is that girl? How can she be so powerful? She killed so many peerless figures. Discussions broke out. Although they could not get close to the top of the Tao platform, these powerhouses could vaguely see the bloody battle happening above. When they noticed Xia Ji kill peerless figures one after another like slaughtering chickens and monkeys by herself, all these experts were shocked to the point their hearts went cold, and they felt a chill run down their spines. Haha, that girl is so powerful, but she's not qualified to fight for the first fortune. What a tragedy! When they heard the news, some people could not help but gloat. But moments later, he shut his mouth and his pupils dilated. He stood there as if he had been struck by lightning, and his heart was filled with fear. It wasn't just him, all the other experts in the surroundings fell silent as well. All of their expressions changed drastically and revealed extreme fear. In their vision, Demon God Lin, the mysterious girl, and Bai Lingshi walked down from the Tao platform. Lin Sun ignored them and left in a hurry with Xia Ji and Bai Lingshi. Only when they disappeared did these powerhouses dare to heave a sigh of relief. All of them looked like they had been relieved of a heavy burden. Be it Lin Sun or Xia Ji, they had proved their strength with bloody and brilliant achievements. It was not something they dared to discuss in their faces. Has the news spread? Someone suddenly asked. It has. It can be foreseen that after the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival ends, Demon God Lin is destined to face an unpredictable crisis when he walks out of Azure Parasol Mountain. But didn't he leave early? No, he can't leave. No one can leave until the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival ends. We have to leave as soon as possible. On the way, Lin Sun frowned. He also realized the seriousness of the problem. Xia Ji's figure was delicate and her bare feet were like jade. She walked beside Lin Sun, holding a black umbrella in her white and slender hands, giving off a unique sense of coldness and tranquility. However, according to the experience of the past Tao Lantern discussions, none of us who have arrived before the Green Lantern Tree will be able to leave until the battle for the first creation comes to an end. Bai Lingxi frowned slightly. Her white robe was stained with blood, and her pretty face was pale. She looked a little weak. She was also heavily injured in the previous fight, which was no better than Lin's. While speaking, Bai Lingxi was slightly startled. She was keenly aware that the mysterious girl beside Lin Sun was sizing her up. He wasn't sizing her up in secret, but openly examining her. The pair of crescent moon eyes that were pitch black like the eternal night carried a unique indifference that didn't carry a trace of emotion. Bai Lingxi was taken aback, and felt slightly uncomfortable. At this time, Xia Ji asked in a clear voice, "What's the relationship between you and Lin Sun?" This kind of question should have been very private, and even if she wanted to ask, she should ask Lin Sun. But Xia Ji was obviously different from others. She asked in such a tranquil, simple, and direct manner that Bai Lingxi couldn't help but be stunned. "Friend." Then, she smiled. She noticed that Xia Ji seemed to care about Lin Sun very much, so she asked such a question. But the way she asked was too direct. "Friend." Xia Ji's ink-black eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. "Yes, friend." Bai Lingxi felt a little strange. What was the relationship between Lin Sun and this girl? Why did she care so much about these questions? Xia Ji nodded and said, "Friend is good." Then she withdrew her gaze and didn't look at Bai Lingxi again. It seemed that the answer had made her lose any interest in Bai Lingxi. Bai Lingxi felt more and more strange. No matter how she thought about it, she could only roughly judge that the relationship between Lin Sun and this girl was definitely not ordinary. It's really interesting. If Lin Sun has some ambiguous female friends around him, I'm afraid this girl will be the first to refuse, right? A strange thought arose in Bai Lingxi's mind. Naturally, Lin Sun heard all of this. However, he was already used to it because Xia Ji had always been different from others. She had been like this since the beginning. Although he was a little curious why Xia Ji would ask such an inexplicable question, Lin Sun was not in the mood to ask about it. He was thinking of a way to leave this place. "Old man, don't tell me you don't know the way out of this place." Soon, Lin Sun found the psychic old herb. When the old rogue heard that, he sneered and said in a disdainful tone, "Nonsense. I've lived in the Azure Parasol Mountain for God knows how many years. Even an ant-hole can't escape my eyes, let alone a mere path." Lin Sun's heart immediately shook. "Where is it?" The old rogue said without hesitation, "Promise me to let me go first, and I'll tell you when I leave. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving even if you kill me." Obviously, he was taking the opportunity to negotiate with Lin Sun, and he was very confident. Lin Sun sneered, "Are you itching for a beating again?" The old rogue's expression changed, and then he scolded angrily, "You little bastard, do you still have a conscience? Who gave you the life-saving elixir at the critical moment just now? You can't be ungrateful like this, right? Kill me if you have the guts. If I even frown, I'll change my surname to yours." He was talking about the root and leaf of the white ginseng. Lin Sun was speechless. A dignified psychic king herb acted like a hooligan. It was too improper. Right at this moment, the old rogue suddenly changed the topic. "Of course, I also know that you just want to use my strength to cultivate." His expression became very solemn, and he had a solemn aura. "All those years ago, I witnessed a group of sages preaching on the Azure Parasol Mountain, and I've listened to many King Realm cultivators expound on the mysteries of the Great Way. I've also witnessed how many young people who stepped foot on the ultimate way rose up. I can tell you clearly that once you do that, don't expect to step foot on the ultimate way in this lifetime. The ultimate way needs to be explored from oneself and verified with all the Tao in the world in order to open up one's own ultimate way in the King Realm. If you rely on external objects, the Tao you achieve will not belong to you after all, let alone the ultimate way in the King Realm." Lin Sun was shocked. He didn't expect that the old rogue had such insight, which really surprised him. "You're right, but I didn't capture you to refine my own Tao, but as a life-saving means. Don't you think that if I had swallowed you just now, my injuries would have healed quickly?" Lin Sun squinted at him. The old rogue's expression froze, and his solemn aura suddenly disappeared. He was so exasperated that he gritted his teeth and said, "Do you know that you are humiliating a medicine sage who will become a sage in the future? Don't talk nonsense. Are you going to tell me or not?" Lin Sun scolded. "I won't tell you even if you kill me." The old rogue was unusually tough this time, "unless you let me go." "Really? Really? Hey, why did you fight with me?" In the end, after a series of negotiations such as intimidation, suppression, and persuasion, Lin Sun agreed to let the old rogue go. The old rogue also agreed to Lin Sun's conditions. Moreover, he would give Lin Sun 3 drops of king herb essence and a king herb seed to make it up to Lin Sun. "Damn it, I've never seen a little brat as ruthless as you. You're too unscrupulous," the old rogue cursed. He was in pain. The king herb essence was his source. Just a single drop could bring him back to life. No matter how serious his injuries were, he would recover in an instant. Similarly, the king herb seed he gave Lin Sun could be said to be a treasure. It could no longer be found in this world. "Remember, I'm the 9-orifice ginseng born from the destiny of heaven and earth. I'm unique in the world. This seed can be considered my only descendant. You must not let it down." The old rogue's face was solemn. "I hope you can go to Kunlun ruins to dig some 5-colored living soil, go to the ultimate ruins to collect some profound Tao holy water, go to the ruins of creation to collect some heaven yellow marrow, and go to the ruins of wonders. The path to the ruins of wonders has long been cut off no matter what, with the 5-colored living soil, profound Tao holy water, and heaven yellow marrow, I'll be able to raise my only descendant. In that case, one day, it might be able to open up its 9 orifices heart like me and possess the potential to become a saint." After hearing that, Lin Sun had the urge to kill. 5-colored living soil, profound Tao holy water, and heaven yellow marrow? Those were legendary divine objects. Even a saint might not have seen one before. This old hooligan was obviously spouting nonsense and talking nonsense with him. On the green lamp tree, under the guidance of the old rogue, Lin Sun and the others walked along one of the branches and gradually walked into the depths of the clouds. In ancient times, every branch of this tree led to a different world. With the help of this tree, the cultivators on the Azure Parasol Mountain could travel to different colossal worlds at will. Unfortunately, it suffered a calamity a long time ago. Now, all that's left of it is an icy cold shell. Come to think of it, we were friends who talked about everything back then, the old rogue sighed. Lin Sun suddenly regretted it. This old rogue obviously knew many secrets. It was not worthwhile to let him go like this. "Then do you know what kind of treasure the first fortune is?" Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. The old rogue said disdainfully, "There's nothing on Kangwu Mountain that I don't know. The so-called first fortune is nothing more than some gifts left by those saints back then." At this point, he seemed to think of something and murmured, "But speaking of which, the fortune that appeared this time was actually the Great Way Lawless Bell. It really surprised me." Chapter 936. The Great Way Without Moment Bell. When Lin Sun heard this name, the first thing that came to his mind was the infinite Great Way bottle he had obtained. After that, he recalled the bronze bell he'd seen on the table on the Tao platform. One was the Great Way bell. The other was the infinite Great Way bottle. They were both named with the word Great Way. Was there any connection between them? At that time, the sages were right. They had long speculated that there would be such a day when the great world would come. Otherwise, they wouldn't have left the Great Way Without Moment bell that they had painstakingly built all their lives here, the old rogue murmured with a touch of sadness and sorrow on his face. It was not a disguise. He seemed to recall many past events. Is this treasure the crystallization of all living beings' efforts you mentioned? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. They still walked on the branches and reached the depths of the clouds. The road ahead was vast, and they had not found the exit to the outside world yet. Yes. The old rogue nodded. The bell you saw on the Taoist altar is the Great Way Without Moment bell, which was built by many sages with painstaking efforts. When the bell rings, it represents the gathering of the power of all living beings, which is enough to change the world and force ghosts and gods to retreat. It's extremely wonderful. Whoever can control it can control the power of all living beings. What a pity! Lin Sun felt a little helpless. If it weren't for the bad situation this time, he would never miss such a good fortune. What a pity! Boy, don't pretend to be innocent after getting the benefit. The old rogue said with a look of disdain and contempt. The Great Way Without Moment bell represents the power of all living beings. When the sages successfully refined it, they suffered unprecedented punishment because it violated the taboo. Even if they could get it, they couldn't use it for a while. Lin Sun was stunned. Why? It lacks the power of all living beings. The old hooligan said casually, the power of all living beings is related to the power of will of all living beings. Only the Almighty who have succeeded in the divine path pilgrimage have the ability to collect it. Brat, you should understand now, right? This treasure isn't something young people like you can use. The wish of all living beings, the Holy Way pilgrimage. Lin Sun was shocked. It was said that when the sages preached to the world and taught all living beings, they would naturally get the faith of all living beings, which would then condense into a mysterious power, the wish of all living beings. It was just like a statue of a deity in a temple in the secular world. After being worshipped by mortals for many years, it would naturally have a solemn and terrifying aura. That kind of aura was the most superficial form of wish power. On the other hand, the so-called wish energy of cultivators was different. It represented a grand vision of cultivating the Tao, and every single true saint would establish their own grand aspirations towards the grand Tao. For this reason, some saints chose to enter the world to educate the masses and carry out their grand aspirations. By obtaining the faith and recognition of the masses, they would be able to obtain an endless supply of the masses' wish power. Similarly, there were saints who chose to come into being and use their own vision to verify with the Taos of the heavens. When they opened up a new path of cultivation or created a new Tao, they would similarly be able to obtain the power of wishes. This power of will was also called the power of will of the great Tao. Whether it was entering the world or coming out of it, the path of the divine path was destined to be inseparable from the power of will. Lin Sun still remembered that in the mulberry forest of the bloodthirsty battlefield, the mysterious golden cicada had made a great wish that was enough to shock the world and shock the ages. He hoped that one day, all living beings in the world could become saints. This was also a great wish of the great Tao. However, Lin Sun still didn't expect that the Great Way bell was so magical that it needed the power of all living beings as its source of power to use. It's really unexpected. So don't play dumb. Compared with the Great Way bell, the immeasurable way bottle you got is the real treasure, the old rogue said with a hint of envy. There was a hint of envy in the old gangster's voice as he spoke. This is also a treasure forged by all living beings. Unfortunately, you're too weak and can't unleash its full power. Back then, a saint from the Azure Parasol Mountain killed 5 saints on his own with this vase in his hand. His saint's power was extraordinary. Lin Sun's expression became strange. He asked curiously, "This bottle is a special reward I got in the extreme realm. How do you know about it?" The old rogue was stunned and said vaguely, "Are you kidding me? Is there anything on Mount Azure Parasol that I don't know?" At the same time, the old rogue hurriedly reminded Lin Sun, "We've reached the exit. Stop." Lin Sun looked around, but all he saw were clouds and mist. There was no exit. "Let me out. I'll open the passage for you," the old rogue shouted. "Tell me first, Who on earth are you? Lin Sun suddenly asked with his dark eyes. Ah, me? The old rogue looked puzzled. Didn't I tell you? I'm a 9-orifice ginseng born from the fate of heaven and earth. Lin Sun interrupted him before he could finish. Are you still lying to me? You're the only old guy with wisdom on Mount Azure Parasol. Do you think it's normal? From the beginning of the first test of Tao discussion, a mysterious bell rang to announce the end of the test. This bell should come from the Great Way bell you mentioned. When I arrived at the Taoist altar, another mysterious voice resounded between heaven and earth, announcing the elimination of the powerhouses who had no chance to compete for the fortune. Speaking of this, a strange light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. When the Palace of Immortals wanted to kill me, the mysterious voice rang again and forced them to retreat with the power of the Great Way bell. Later, the mysterious voice announced that Xia Ji was not qualified to compete for the first fortune because she was in conflict with the so-called Great Way bell. Do you think it's normal? Lin Sun said word by word. But what does it have to do with me? The old rogue looked surprised and confused. I've been suppressed in this pagoda by you, so I don't know what you're talking about. A playful look flashed in Lin Sun's eyes. If you admit it, I'll suspect that you're lying. But now that you deny everything, it proves that you're guilty. Didn't you say that there's nothing on Mount Azure Parasol that you don't know? Why didn't you explain the mysterious bell and the mysterious voice? Why did you deny it directly? The old rogue looked wronged and said angrily, You're obviously thinking too much. It's not good to be suspicious. Really? Lin Sun stared at the old guy. Suddenly, the old rogue sighed deeply and said with a lonely and deep face, Since you've seen through me, I won't hide it from you. Now it's time to reveal my real identity. He raised his head with disdain in his eyes and said unhurriedly, Time passes and the vicissitudes of the world. I originally thought that I could spend the rest of my life laughing and laughing, but I never thought that there would be a young man like you in this world. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm the owner of Mount Azure Parasol. In ancient times, I was called the teacher of all saints, and I was respected by all races. The psychic King Herb, who was like a scoundrel, now put on the demeanor of a master and admitted that he was the master of Kangwu Mountain in a sentimental and vicissitudes of life. This made Lin Sun's lips twitch fiercely, and he was so impulsive that he wanted to beat someone up. Bai Fenglu was shameless to the extreme, Old Toad was smug and arrogant to the extreme, and this old hooligan was absolutely shameless, smug, and shameless to the extreme. Lin Sun had seen this kind of guy before. Not only did he talk big, but he also dared to regard himself as the teacher of all saints, which was too shameless and shameless. Hey, what's wrong with your eyes? In ancient times, even saints had to salute and greet me respectfully when they saw me. You little bastard, you have no manners at all. The old rogue was very dissatisfied with Lin Sun's reaction and complained loudly. Was this the king of all saints? Lin Sun couldn't stand it anymore, so he let the old rogue out. He also knew that unless the old rogue was willing to talk, he wouldn't get any valuable information from him. Seeing the light of day again, the old rogue almost wept with joy. Especially when he saw Xia Ji beside Lin Sun. His eyes shone with a kind of fanaticism. Lin Sun, can this spiritual medicine be eaten? Xia Ji's voice was sweet and clear, with a trace of curiosity, as if she was staring at food. The old rogue shuddered and hurriedly shook his roots. No, no, I can't eat it. If I eat it, I will have diarrhea all the way. The more he talked, the more unbearable Lin Sun felt. He said with a chill, Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and open the passage. Buzz. The old rogue was very happy. He didn't move, but the white clouds suddenly set off a violent wave, and the void rose and fell like a tide. Finally, a nearly invisible door was formed. Lin Sun was stunned. This old guy really didn't lie to him. Xia Ji and Bai Lingshi were also a little surprised. They didn't expect that this very unscrupulous peerless King Herb could have such magical means. Boy, I have to remind you that although this passage can send you to a safe place, your breath has already been locked by others because of your fighting and killing along the way. When you go out, you will inevitably cause some trouble, the old rogue said seriously. He suddenly became very kind, which made Lin Sun a little uncomfortable. Then let me ask you one last question. What was the name of the orthodoxy that occupied this Kangwu mountain back then? Lin Sun asked. The old rogue shook his head. It's already in the past. Why mention it? If you really want to know, go to Kunlun ruins in the future and you will know. After saying that, he swept his roots, which were like the sleeve of the universe, contained the power of Zhou Su, and sent Lin Sun and the others into the seemingly invisible door. During this process, Lin Sun and the others didn't even have time to react, nor could they resist at all. I've been tricked. This old thing is definitely not as simple as a king herb. This was the only thought in Lin Sun's mind before he left. Damn it, I've finally sent this boy away. But why did that tower fall into his hands? Did he enter the mountain of heart in the ultimate? I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse that he took away the immeasurable Great Way bottle. The spiritual king herb that Lin Sun regarded as the old rogue showed a thoughtful look at this moment. Imperceptibly, his momentum changed. His momentum was like the void, and his majesty was like the sea. Chapter 937. Outside the Azure Parasol Mountain. Yu Lingkong is dead. When the news spread, the first thought that came to the cultivators' minds was that it was fake. He was a peerless figure from the southern mystical world's pure land of longevity. He was born into a sage family and was famous throughout the southern mystical world. His foundation was so strong that he surpassed his peers. How could such a figure be killed? However, along with the news of Yu Lingkong's death spreading out more and more, all the cultivators went silent while their expressions changed indeterminately. It was as if thunder was rumbling in their hearts, and tempestuous waves had arisen. The atmosphere was deathly silent and oppressive. Even Granny Golden Crane and the other big shots were shocked at this moment. Was Fiend Celestial Lin really that powerful? If Yu Lingkong had really been killed by him, then what level had his cultivation reached among his peers? The Immortal Hall is useless. It's being held back by a mysterious pagoda in Demon God Lin's hands. Yu Lingkong can't counterattack. When they heard the news, the cultivators' emotions became even more complicated. They couldn't help but feel lost amidst their shock. Demon God Lin really possessed a sage treasure like the rumors said. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary sage treasure. Otherwise, how could he possibly stand against a sage treasure like the Immortal Hall? A young man from the lower realm had stirred up a storm in the West Hing world in less than half a year. He had advanced triumphantly and shocked the world again and again. He had no one to rely on, yet he had forcefully carved out a path of glory among the younger generation. That in itself was like a miracle that could shock the world. Who in the West Hung world did not know of Demon God Lin's name? It was foreseeable that when the news of him killing Yu Lingkong spread, it would not only shake the West Hung world, but it would also spread his name to the East Victory world, the Southern Mystical world, and the Northern Dipper world. Many cultivators were in a daze. Demon God Lin had risen too quickly. Was he really invincible among the younger generation? Was there anyone in the same generation as Demon God Lin who could go against him? There were also many cultivators who were mentally unbalanced and could not accept it. A young man from a poor lower realm, who did not even belong to a sect, was outstanding and leading the way in the West Hing world. How could they accept that? Amidst the silent and oppressive atmosphere, there was another piece of news. Demon God Lin has suffered a calamity. He was heavily injured by the Hall of Immortals and is currently being besieged. If nothing goes wrong, it's highly likely that he will be killed. All of a sudden, the originally oppressive and deathly silent atmosphere was broken, causing an uproar. All sorts of noises sounded out, as if an explosion had occurred. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. A person like Fiend Celestial Lin should not be allowed to live in this world. Some Xiozhi were gloating. Impossible. It wasn't easy for a peerless figure like Demon God Lin to appear in this world. He's destined to lead the trend of an era in the future. How can he be executed just like that? Some Xiozhi could not accept it. On the other hand, those great figures all heaved sighs of relief in unison, and many of them revealed faint smiles. If Demon God Lin was still alive, he was destined to suppress the successors of those ancient orthodoxies to the point where they couldn't even lift their heads. He was like a huge mountain that made it hard for them to breathe. Fortunately, he was going to be in trouble. Granny Golden Crane felt that it was a great pity. She had always suggested recruiting Lin Sun as a disciple, thinking that a peerless genius like him should have a brighter future. Now that she knew that he was going to be in trouble, her emotions became extremely complicated. However, after waiting for a long time, there was no new news. This made the Xiozhi outside Azure Parasol Mountain a little impatient. Is Demon God Lin dead? All the Xiozhi were puzzled. It was also at this moment that the latest news came out. Demon God Lin was not killed. Instead, the geniuses who had besieged him were all killed on the spot. The culprit was a mysterious girl who had appeared out of nowhere. It's too terrifying. She killed one person with a single spear, leaving no survivors. Those peerless figures were as fragile as paper in her hands. When the news spread, there was a strange silence at first. Then, there was a complete uproar and uproar. Some were excited, while others were despondent. Amidst the uproar, there were also heart-wrenching roars. How dare you kill Mu Jianting, the successor of Yushu Temple? No matter how capable you are, you must atone for your crime with your life. Impossible. My grandson, Shang Jia, was born with a mysterious Tao pattern. How could he be in trouble? Demon God Lin, you'll die a horrible death. From today onwards, Azure Sea Taoism sect will kill Demon God Lin at all costs to avenge Li Qinghuan. Those big shots were livid and furious. They looked as if they were about to go crazy. Terrifying killing intent filled the world, making the area extremely solemn. Suddenly, the uproar was suppressed. Everyone realized that even if Demon God Lin came out alive this time, he would have to face the wrath of many big shots. Why did this happen? It was simple. Although Demon God Lin was strong, there was no great force that could protect him. That was why those big shots dared to target him so unscrupulously. There was no need to think about it at all. What happened today was too explosive and destined to turn into a monstrous storm. In the following days, all the ancient orthodoxies in the West Heng world would be shocked, and the name of the young devil Lin soon would spread all over the world again, making him a real man of the hour. Of course, there was another premise, that was, whether Lin Sun could withstand the anger and killing intent of those big shots when he walked out of Azure Mountain. At the same time, there was a question lingering in the minds of all practitioners. Who was the mysterious girl who held the black umbrella and the purple spear? Inside that seemingly illusory door was a space-time passageway. Colorful space-time light bands twisted together, creating a kind of heart-palpitating beauty. Entering it was like entering a magnificent chaotic space, surrounded by gray mist, which was formed by rules. Only sages could pry into the supreme mysteries contained in it. Whoosh! It was as if Lin Sun and the others were pushed out by a space-time force in an instant before they had time to react. They came to the outside world. The mountains in the distance were verdant like smoke. They were in a valley in the mountains. Looking up, they could see peaks, mountains, and lofty sky and earth, which gave them a desolate and primitive atmosphere. Rumble! A waterfall fell from one side of the mountain like a white dragon hanging upside down, making a thunderous sound. The mist was dense, and the waves were like snow. What was this place? How far was it from Azure Mountain? Lin Sun and the others were in a daze, but they were sure that they were not outside Azure Mountain. At least it could be called a safe place for the time being. Lin Sun, I want to sleep, Xia Ji suddenly said. She was holding a black umbrella, which was as lustrous as the eternal night, covering the white light in the sky. Are you going to practice quietus again? Lin Sun's heart tightened. No. Xia Ji shook her head. Summer Solstice shook her head. The method I'm practicing revolves between prosperity and decline. Extreme prosperity leads to decline, extreme decline leads to prosperity. It's a very annoying cycle. Only by breaking the barrier of extremity and stepping into the realm of infinity can I eliminate this defect. She frowned at the end of her words. So you're... Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. I can't fight. Xia Ji did not hide anything. Lin Sun was stunned. The 9 revolutions of quietus was really strange. He did not dare to neglect it and let Xia Ji rest in the wordless pagoda. What's the relationship between you and her? Bai Lingshi could not help but ask at this moment. I picked her up from the forest a few years ago. Lin Sun smiled. Since then, we've been depending on each other. Bai Lingshi was stunned and felt that it was ridiculous. How could he randomly pick up such a unique and powerful girl? Then, she felt relieved. She thought Lin Sun was joking and did not want to talk about Xia Ji. What do you plan to do next? Bai Lingshi asked. Hurry up and heal my injuries, Lin Sun said without hesitation. You're not leaving now? I suspect someone will come looking for us soon. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. Before leaving Azure Mountain, Old Hooligan had warned him that even if they reached the outside world, it was destined that they would not be safe in a short time. After making a decision, Lin Sun gave a drop of royal herb essence to Bai Lingshi. Use this to heal your injuries. You'll recover faster. This was a drop of origin essence extracted from Old Hooligan. It could be called a precious treasure that had the miraculous effect of bringing the dead back to life. Lin Sun had only extorted 3 drops from Old Hooligan after much effort. Isn't this too precious? Bai Lingshi's expression changed, and a trace of peculiarity appeared on her beautiful and clear face. She could see the miraculous effect of this medicine at a glance. It was just a drop, but it was enshrouded in divine light and emitted wisps of brilliant divine light. It was just like the legendary immortal dew. Just take it, Lin Sun said with a smile and forcefully pushed it to her. At the top of the Taoist altar, Bai Lingshi had risked her life to block the attack for him, and that was why she was heavily injured. This was a friendship that had gone through life and death together. Lin Sun would not be reluctant to give her just a drop of royal herb essence. Let's hurry up and cultivate. Lin Sun sat cross-legged on a rock on one side of the waterfall and began to adjust his breath with all his strength. He was seriously injured this time by the power of the holy treasure and almost died. Thanks to a wisp of root hair and a green leaf given by Old Hooligan, he could hold on until now. Although these 2 kinds of treasures were not as good as royal herb essence, they were also amazing enough to heal all his injuries. The only thing he lacked at present was time. Bai Lingshi stood there, her white clothes stained with blood and her pretty face pale. But her temperament was still as ethereal and beautiful as before, as if she had come out of a painting. She stared at Lin Sun, who was meditating and cultivating for a long time, with an inexplicable curve appearing on the corners of her moist lips. This guy is a good choice to choose a Taoist companion, however. She soon thought of Xia Solstice and suddenly felt happy. Anyone who wanted to be Lin Sun's Taoist companion had to pass the test of Xia Solstice first. Xia Solstice was a godlike girl. At the thought of Xia Solstice's powerful and desperate means, Bai Lingshi immediately extinguished the idea that she had inadvertently produced just now. I'd like to see which woman has the courage to provoke Lin Sun in the future. Bai Lingshi thought with some evil interest.